Night falls over a quiet town under a bright moon. Inside a tavern, a man tells his companion about a certain band of thieves. The patrons erupt in laughter as the man shares a humorous story. A hooded, white-haired man watches the tavern from the darkness outside. The scene shifts inside as a door swings open. Amidst the rowdy laughter and talk of drinks, the hooded, white-haired man moves through the crowd. A gloved hand slams an envelope onto the bar as the bartender looks on. In the year 413 at Morge Corvat, the hooded, white-haired man waits at the counter. The bartender remains silent, sliding a bottle over the envelope while providing directions to room 402 at the Anatol Inn. The hooded, white-haired man picks up the envelope, noting it is an invitation to an illegal gambling den. He announces his departure from the establishment. As he walks away, a purple-haired girl wearing a pink hood passes him by. She suddenly stops in her tracks with a film step. She stops the hooded, white-haired man by claiming the invitation is a fake. He glances back with a sharp, surprised look. He stands confused before the girl, questioning her sudden claim. A small smile appears on her face as she prepares to repeat herself. The purple-haired girl reveals her face, smiling brightly as flowers seem to bloom around her. The white-haired man stares at her in complete shock. He is captivated by her unique pink eyes, wondering at their rarity. He wonders about her identity, noting he has never seen eyes like hers before. She checks if he is listening and reiterates that the invitation he holds is a forgery. He suddenly realizes the gravity of her words as his eyes widen. He looks toward the bar, seeing that the bartender is gone. He looks around the tavern, realizing the staff has attempted a quiet retreat. A look of realization and focus crosses the white-haired man's face. He points toward the back, commanding others to catch the fleeing man. The patrons in the tavern stand up as the room becomes tense. The bartender curses under his breath while sprinting away. Two people immediately begin chasing the fleeing bartender. The purple-haired girl stands confused, questioning the sudden chaos she caused. A vision of thorns appears as she looks toward the man. The white-haired man realizes that the bartender's flight proves her claim was correct. He concludes that her assessment of the fake document must be true. He wonders how she could possibly recognize a forgery from such a distance. He suspects she might be a former executive of Magdala's faction or that the fake was just very obvious. The two stand facing each other in the now quiet center of the tavern. He asks if she truly recognized the fake at a glance, and she confirms it with a cheerful laugh. He explains that only arena associates should have it, and she asks if it belongs to someone from the arena. He stares at her, still trying to process her strange presence. She clarifies that the information was simply written on the item itself. Her pink eyes sparkle with a mysterious, magical light. A glowing system window reveals his true identity as Grand Duke Ferrado Schroeder, who is undercover to capture the Magdala gang. The scene shifts to a past memory where a stock of documents is slammed down for sorting. A dark-haired woman named Bexon looks at the workload with exhausted, sunken eyes. Her boss demands that she finish the entire pile by the next morning. The boss leaves for the day, mockingly telling her not to waste the company's electricity. She lets out a heavy sigh, realizing she will need several energy drinks to finish the task. Bexon reflects on her life as a regular employee who needs to stop eating instant meals. She recalls her difficult life as an orphan who worked desperately hard to achieve a stable career. The convenience store clerk enthusiastically greets the customer with a bright smile. Bexon laughs and agrees that her situation seems quite bleak. A sharp beep sounds as the clerk comments on her overworked team while Bexon lets out a heavy sigh. The sound of her footsteps topping against the floor follows as the clerk offers a free drink as payback for previous kindness. She motivates herself to power through the night to ensure her contract is renewed. The rhythmic ticking of a clock fills the room while she works alone in the silent office. More ticking sounds as time passes and she reaches for another energy drink. The chair lets out a long, low creak as she finally finishes the exhausting task. Her eyes snap open wide as morning light begins to fill the room. She realizes there is no time left to even freshen up before the day begins. A playful chime rings from her phone as a game notification appears. She decides to play since she knows sleep is no longer an option. The mobile game loading screen appears on her phone. A narrative describes monsters descending from the mountains to bring disaster. The story follows a former farmer who heads into the mountains to fight back. She reflects on the typical RPG journey of gaining fame and rising as a hero. Bexon notes that watching the character grow is surprisingly entertaining. Her hands tremble uncontrollably as she suddenly notices something strange. Her heart beats with a heavy, fast rhythm as she wonders about the energy drinks. Her vision begins to swim and fade as she struggles to focus. She stumbles and sways while desperately trying to call for help because she cannot breathe. A low, muffled humming sound vibrates through the air as she collapses. A sharp, ragged gasp for air escapes her as she fears her death is imminent. A sudden, bright flash of light accompanies a system window announcing she cleared an inferno stage. More windows announce rewards and the start of a tutorial stage with adjusted difficulty. Her eyes snap open to reveal vibrant pink irises under a clear sky. The noisy chatter of the crowd fills the air in a bustling town square. The purple-haired girl stands in her pink hooded gown looking at the celebration. A vendor loudly announces a one-day sale of rare treasures from the north. A circus performer invites everyone to join the show and buy candies. She looks around in a complete daze at the vibrant world around her. She observes that the architecture is nothing like the modern buildings she knows. Happy villagers pass by her as she takes in the fantastical setting. A look of absolute shock crosses her face as the realization hits. She sees countless system windows floating above every person in the crowd. A sudden quick top sounding draws her attention to a small mouse. A small mouse lets out a tiny squeak, causing her to gasp in surprise. She stops and stares, realizing something even more bizarre about the rodent. She is stunned to see that even a rat has its own system window. She struggles to accept that this reality could possibly be real. The purple-haired girl realizes she is truly inside the game world. She wonders what happened to the body she left behind. She ponders the state of her physical self before she crossed over. A vision of her collapsed body in the office returns to her mind. She concludes that she must have died from the extreme stress of her past life. She looks up with a new sense of awareness and focus. She realizes she gained strange new abilities during her transition into this world. She reflects on the burden of having to live an entire life over again. She trembles with a surge of intense emotion, vowing to live differently after her miserable past. A sharp ping sounds as she awakens to her new, determined reality. The purple-haired girl asks about a quest. A system window initiates the main quest. She questions her sudden world-destroying directive. She regrets her final, bitter deathbed wish. A cry of denial rings through the air. She demands that the system cancel the mission. A flurry of windows deems her request impossible. She rues wishing for the world to end. A heavy, long sigh escapes her weary form. She tries desperately to remain perfectly calm. The quest promises godhood upon total success. She wonders if divinity requires a mass genocide. A warning regarding failure penalties appears before her. She ponders the mystery behind the unknown penalty. She hopes the system avoids a death sentence. Dark memories of her past life resurface. Her previous life continues to haunt her mind. Her final moment remains a vivid, dark reality. She vows never to experience final death again. She plans to outlast the tutorial stage's trials. A look of grim determination crosses her face. The crowd is covered in floating system notifications. Her feet plant firmly on the stone path. The setting sun marks a new life's transition. She studies how the strange interface windows function. Interaction requires conscious effort rather than just thought. She focuses her mind on the objects nearby. Item descriptions appear after her deep, concentrated focus. Constant sensory intake begins to drain her energy. Her public command results in total social embarrassment. Rumors of mountain disasters spread among the villagers. She recognizes the incoming early game catastrophe instantly. The main story plot hasn't even truly begun. Monsters will soon descend upon this quiet world. She notes the town's current and prosperous state. She plans to leave the heroics to others. Her retirement plan seems quite solid and comfortable. She aims for a peaceful and relaxing existence. A sudden chime heralds a new system quest. Absolute horror and shock cross her pale face. A glowing window flickers with mysterious blue light. She initially hopes for a quick financial gain. A sudden realization drains the spirit from her. She expresses loud outrage at the system hewer. The task requires her to spread a plague. She demands a more reasonable and moral objective. Her empty pockets dictate a difficult new path. She recalls a specific piece of historical lore. A quiet moment of dark, internal contemplation follows. She turns quickly with a sharp, focused snap. She instinctively turns toward the passing crowd. She wonders about the mysterious person nearby. Glowing status text captures her immediate attention. She wonders why an overlord candidate is wandering here. She casts a suspicious, subtle, sideways glance. A system window reveals the memoir is fake. She debates whether to expose the clever counterfeit. Dark memories of her past tasks resurface. A sudden, sharp chime sounding as she is startled. A lucrative gold reward is suddenly offered. The massive payout leaves her completely stunned. Shimmering gold coins rain down before her. Financial gain quickly erases her lingering hesitation. Bathilda notes that the signature appears to be authentic. The vendor claims it is a family heirloom. He enthusiastically continues his deceptive sales pitch. He offers a special festival price for today. Minervina steps forward to interrupt their negotiation. Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick slide sounding. Her path is blocked by a sudden, heavy footstep sounding. She resolves to monitor system windows buyer. She clears her throat to interrupt them. Bathilda explains she plans to have the item appraised. The vendor boasts about the fair's hidden treasures. He mentions how even royalty looks forward to it. A sudden, low rumble sounding as realization hits. She envisions a life of golden wealth. She hopes to strike it rips today. A sudden, nagging doubt stops her short. She realizes she has no money for investments. Bathilda asks if she is also interested in it. Minervina decides to focus on the gold reward. Tense silence falls as their gazes lock. A confident smile crosses her pale face. The system window lists specific signs of forgery. Bathilda asks for clarification regarding the forgery claim. Minervina points out that the ink is brand new. Bathilda calmly demands more proof for the statement. The sudden scrutiny leaves her feeling dazed. She wonders if there is more evidence needed. The system highlights the glue used for biting. Minervina points out the glue marks on the mine. Her heart jumps at a sudden, sharp thud sounding. Her own reflection leaves her completely shocked. She notes her own ethereal and pale appearance. She anticipates the next system notifications were real. A sudden, glitchy buzzing sounding as her identity appears. The window notes her own surprise at herself. She realizes she can also appraise herself. Her true nature feels deeply unsettling to her. Bathilda observes that Minervina is deeply lost in thought about something else. Minervina is startled out of her daze and begins scanning the nearby stalls. A system window identifies a rare masterpiece by artisan Pavella among the vendor's items. Minervina points excitedly at a white enameled egg sitting on a table. The older vendor looks at the girls with a confused and questioning expression. Minervina stops the departing pair, asking them to wait for just a moment. Minervina whispers to Bathilda that the item is a work by the famous artisan Pavella. Bathilda asks for more proof while the system reveals the egg's hidden mechanism. Minervina instructs Bathilda to insert a pin into the hole on the bottom. Bathilda notes the egg's high value and asks if Minervina really wishes to part with it. Minervina is paralyzed with shock as the astronomical true value of the item is revealed. Minervina looks at the simple egg, unable to believe its massive price tag. A close-up reveals the detailed, intricate pattern on the egg's plaster exterior. A system notification confirms that the object's value is even higher than her initial estimate. Minervina desperately wishes she had the money to buy the item back herself. She laments that the quest isn't finished and cries out in internal frustration. Minervina forces a polite smile while internally cursing the unfairness of the world. Bathilda asks if Minervina is being helpful because she knows her true identity. Minervina smiles awkwardly, thinking the princess is far too perceptive for her own good. Bathilda explains how national treasures can be found even at shabby market stalls. Bathilda gestures toward the massive, glittering scale of the ongoing treasure hunt event. Minervina considers the opinion that the fair's success was always inevitable. Bathilda asks for clarification regarding Minervina's mysterious statement. A sudden, quick slide sounding as Minervina looks up with a sharp and focused gaze. An overhead view shows the enormous crowds in stalls filling the streets of the fair. Handfuls of cash and gold coins facilitate a massive transaction network across the city. Bathilda listens with a serious face as Minervina shares her dark insights. A bright ping sounds as a window confirms the quest's successful completion. Bathilda asks why the royal family would allow such blatant money laundering to occur. Bathilda explains the logical reason for tracking the criminals' financial trails. Minervina asks about the more unusual answer to the princess's question. Minervina suggests the royal family uses the fair to launder their own funds. Minervina introduces herself as Minervina Rector against a backdrop of blooming roses. Bathilda's red eyes sharpen as she processes the girl's fallen family name. Bathilda looks at Minervina with a small, knowing, and confident smile. Minervina worries that her identity has doomed her prospects in this world. Bathilda hands Minervina a heavy reward back and a red jewel brooch. Bathilda instructs her to bring the brooch to the Levantor Palace for a future visit. The red jewel brooch sparkles brilliantly amidst an ornate floral pattern. Bathilda cheerfully demands that Minervina makes sure to visit her later. Minervina stands in a stunned silence, watching the princess depart. Minervina immediately resolves that she will never set foot in the palace. Night falls over the quiet, stone-paved streets of the Blue Moon Fair. Bathilda walks away with a smile, satisfied with her new treasure. The black-haired companion prepares to open the egg with a metal pen. A sudden, sharp click sounding as the egg's mechanism is activated. The egg opens to reveal a magnificent, glowing crystal lily flower inside. Bathilda laughs, realizing she is the one who ended up in debt after the trade. Bathilda reflects on the fallen house of Rector and Minervina's sudden appearance. Bathilda decides she will keep a close eye on the girl for a while. Darkness settles over the quiet evening. The scene shifts to a moonlit building. A sudden, loud bang sounding as doors open. A sudden, soft thud sounding as she collapses while laughing to herself. Minervina notes that the princess was incredibly generous to give nearly 800 gold as a reward. She decides it is better to wash up before going to bed. A sudden soft slide sounding as she begins to undress for a bath. A sudden sharp gasp sounding as she is startled by her reflection. She reacts with confusion after seeing a mysterious shape on her skin. She expresses shock while wondering about the nature of the wound on her chest. Night remains calm outside the moonlit window. Minervina organizes her thoughts about the world and her identity while she washes. She realizes this world is not merely a game. This reality feels more like a parallel universe with game-like elements. She notes luxury soap is proudly available at inns despite normally being for nobility. She reflects on the difficult life belonging to Minervina Ritor. She concludes that the girl's life does not seem peaceful at all. She recalls seeing a large cross-shaped scar on her chest while washing earlier. She realizes the wound was not self-inflicted and wonders who could have done it. She wonders why the daughter was left alone in the capital despite her family winning. She is puzzled by how the princess recognized her and notes her lack of information. She identifies a third crucial realization regarding her status. She notes her only ability in this world is the power to read information. A sudden rhythmic tap sounding as she walks, noting her lack of an inventory window.
A sudden soft flop sounding as she plans to make a fortune and gather information.
A new day dawns over the busy city streets. A sudden firm click sounding as she stops in her tracks. A long line of people waits outside for a local physician. She realizes she has potentially found a financial jackpot. She considers the necessity of physicians and notes her own lack of medical knowledge. The system window provides medical details about the nearby townspeople in response to her thoughts. She feels confident that she could become a physician to avoid starving. A sudden quiet gasp sounding as she reacts to a name she hears. A sudden quick turn sounding as she overhears someone mentioning the name Reptor. One man asks about the current whereabouts of the Rector family while his companion listens. Minervina introduces herself to the men as flowers bloom around her. She asks the men if they know anything about Baron Rector. Minervina waves cheerfully while acknowledging the nearby waitress.
She claims to be naive and asks the men for guidance regarding the Baron.
The scene shifts to the historical record of the Rector family. Legends tell of a powerful and all-knowing sage associated with House Rector. The sage left a final wish for another sage to appear before passing away. The royal family agreed to financially support the barony in exchange for the sage's return. Despite numerous efforts, the promised sage never appeared in the family lineage. The royal family eventually withdrew their support despite the current baron's protests. The baron died from shock and his wife reportedly fled to parts unknown. Minervina ponders if the family only had a single daughter. She realizes that she is that very daughter who has now appeared. She holds a candied fruit snack decorated with a red ribbon. She eats while reflecting on her identity as a completely ruined noble. Minervina realizes her appraisal window is much like the legendary sage's power. She ponders the fact that she technically is the new sage.
A sudden sharp chill sounding as she imagines being kidnapped by Princess Bathilda.
Minervina envisions herself as a puppet being controlled by a demonic version of Bathilda. A sudden soft thud sounding as she drops her snack in pure terror. She reflects on how she almost repeated the mistakes of her past life. Minervina desperately prays to avoid any further involvement with the imperial family. She quickly discards the idea of being a physician to avoid unwanted attention. Her attempts to work at pawn shops and jewelry stores end in quick rejections. She sighs, realizing that job hunting is far more difficult than she expected. A sudden soft rustle sounding as she walks despondently across the cobblestones. She notices a crumpled flyer under her feet and picks it up. A sudden quick rustle sounding as she unfolds the advertisement. The flyer advertises Sophus's appraisal office, claiming to evaluate any item regardless of suspicion. A sudden heavy thud sounding as she stands before the grand doors of the office. Minervina decides to check out the prestigious Sophus's appraisal office. The office handles everything from common stones to national treasures. A golden star-shaped emblem represents the high status of the appraisal guild. The flyer emphasizes that they will appraise anything for the right price. Dangerous items with dark sorcery can be difficult to identify through knowledge alone. Successful appraisal requires the use of mana to neutralize dangerous energy. A sudden, soft chime sounding as Minervina enters the building with a confident smile.
A sudden, sharp click sounding as she enters the main hall, determined to get hired.
An overhead view shows the grand, bustling interior of the appraisal center. A receptionist calls for the next customer while a clerk is told to report to the vice guild leader. Minervina stands out in the crowd, looking slightly out of place but resolute.
A sudden, soft tap sounding as the clerk approaches Minervina with a look of surprise.
Minervina tells the clerk she wants to apply for a job, surprising him. The clerk notes that the official recruitment period has already ended. A sudden, quiet sounding as the clerk tries to figure out how to handle the situation.
The clerk is struck by Minervina's glossy hair and her surprisingly noble demeanor.
He realizes she doesn't act like a commoner even when being treated politely.
A sudden, quick ping sounding as she notes the clerk's expensive, custom-made clothing.
Minervina accurately deduces that the clerk smokes and owns a dog, suggesting he should quit for the pet.
The clerk is left speechless by her sudden and accurate personal insights. A sudden, cheerful chime sounding as she smiles, leaving the clerk completely bewildered. He decides this is not a normal situation and rushes to find the vice guild leader. The scene shifts to a bright window inside a private office.
A blonde-haired woman stands with her back to the door in the quiet room.
Elise Barrett, the vice guildmaster, turns around and asks what is the matter. A sudden, soft chime sounding as the door opens to the office. The clerk explains that a special case has arrived to apply for a counselor position. Elise listens with a serious expression as the clerk describes the newcomer. The clerk insists that the vice guildmaster should come and see the applicant personally. He believes she will understand the situation once she meets the girl. A sudden, soft hum sounding as Elise agrees to meet the applicant. Elise touches her brooch, looking thoughtful about the unusual request. A sudden, rhythmic tap sounding as Minervina walks through the hallway, wondering if it's far.
Elise asks if the girl over there is the applicant, and the clerk confirms it.
A sudden, soft slide sounding as Elise pulls out a glowing blue crystal pendant.
A magical pendulum detects an opponent's power level. Stronger magical power triggers greater pendulum vibration.
A sudden, soft silence sounding as the pendulum remains motionless.
A sudden, soft thud sounding as Elise and the clerk stare in disappointment. A sudden, soft silence sounding as the pendulum continues to stay still. Elise notes the pendulum is failing to react at all. A sudden, sharp snap sounding as Elise angrily questions the clerk's job in it.
The clerk offers a quick apology for his apparent mistake.
A sudden, quick swish sounding as Elise orders the applicant's dismissal.
Elise admits she had expected a powerful wizard. Elise walks away, expressing her deep disappointment in the situation.
A sudden, sharp turn sounding as she freezes, recalling Minervina's words.
Minervina examines a display, asking if a cup is for ceremonial use.
Elise realizes Minervina identified the only genuine item in the room.
She marvels that Minervina identified it at a single glance.
A sudden, loud bang sounding as a man demands an appraisal.
Minervina and Elise turn toward the sudden disturbance downstairs.
A man in orange argues heatedly with the receptionist. He refuses to follow procedures, demanding a rough price estimate. The receptionist explains that she must follow official appraisal rules. Narrative text emphasizes that accurate appraisals happen on the second floor. A sudden, heavy sigh sounding as the man pressures for an estimate. The receptionist refuses to provide an arbitrary price for the ring.
The man expresses his extreme frustration and his urgent haste.
Minervina watches from above, noting his anger over something trivial. A sudden, sharp gasp sounding as she realizes something. Her appraisal window identifies the ring as a stolen item. The system identifies the man as a gambler and a thief. Minervina notes his gambling addiction is driving his desperate haste. She decides staying much longer would be a mistake. A sudden, soft smile sounding as she prepares to intervene.
The receptionist comments on the ring's high apparent quality.
A sudden, low buzz sounding as Minervina interrupts from the balcony. Minervina publicly declares that the man's ring is stolen.
A sudden, sharp flinch sounding as the man panics and denies it.
Minervina challenges him to prove the ring isn't stolen. The system warns that the man is preparing to flee. A sudden, soft gasp sounding as the man realizes he is caught. A sudden, loud sounding as the man lunges for the box. The man curses and grabs the ring box from the counter.
A sudden, quick swish sounding as he shouts for a path.
A sudden, sharp thud sounding as Minervina trips the fleeing thief.
A sudden, loud crash sounding as the man falls and drops the box.
A sudden, quick clink sounding as Elise catches the box way hair. Elise examines the retrieved ring box with a serious expression. Security guards pin the man down as he demands release. Minervina confirms her certainty about the stolen ring to Elise.
Elise orders her guards to hand the man to security.
A sudden, quick turn sounding as the thief is led away. Minervina reflects that addicts are the same in every world. Minervina smiles warmly while expressing her satisfaction at catching the thief. A sharp, quiet focus settling as Elise watches Minervina with intense, calculating eyes. Intricate golden sun patterns decorate the room as Elise trusts her professional peck. Elise remains certain that the girl standing before her is truly exceptional. Minervina confirms her interest in joining the appraisal office as a staff member. Elise excitedly gestures for them to begin discussing the terms of her employment.
Minervina beams, celebrating the fact that her system window is working perfectly.
Elise leads the way into a lavish private meeting room for their interview. A sudden soft rustle sounding as Elise asks for tea while they sit down.
Elise maintains a friendly, professional smile during the start of their conversation.
Minervina cheerfully dismisses the praise, claiming she was happy to help earlier.
Elise explains that thieves and gamblers often bring stolen goods here for quick cash.
Minervina gazes out the window, questioning why the government allows such illegal activity.
Elise notes that Minervina seems surprisingly naive about the current state of the capital.
The atmosphere shifts as Elise begins to recount a well-known local tragedy.
A power struggle between the Emperor and Duke Jahig has left the city vulnerable.
Security gaps have led to a massive increase in theft throughout the capital.
Illegal gambling halls are flourishing as people grow more desperate for money. A sudden, quiet sounding as a discovery is made in a dark basement. Two men find an empty room and realize they have arrived far too late. A sudden, soft silence sounding as the blue-haired man awaits his leader's next move.
A red-haired investigator addresses the white-haired man as royalty, reporting a new lead.
A sudden, sharp swish sounding as the nobleman turns his focus toward the mission.
He commands his team to pull back and abandon their current search area. A sudden, quick, rhythmic tap sounding as they walk away, discussing the next location.
The team reports that a specific tavern is under investigation for trading illegal invitations.
The prince notes that a secret code is likely required to enter the hall.
A sudden, loud whoosh sounding as they hurry toward the exit to save time. Back in the office, Elise confirms her previous statement as the tea arrives. A sudden, soft clink sounding as the maid sets 3 different teapots down. Elise smiles gracefully while the fine tableware is presented on the tray.
Minervina's eyes glow as she spots an opportunity to show off her skills.
Her appraisal window instantly identifies 2 counterfeits among the expensive tea set. Minervina casually remarks that the genuine 90-year-old teapot isn't actually that impressive.
Elise is left momentarily speechless by the girl's blunt and accurate observation.
A sudden, quick slide sounding as Minervina reaches for a tea canister. Minervina's eyes narrow as she questions the authenticity of the premium tea leaves. Her system confirms the high quality of the leaves, leaving Elise completely stunned. A sudden, quiet hum sounding as Elise tries to process the girl's incredible intuition.
A sudden, heavy thud sounding as Minervina stands up to declare her readiness.
Minervina explains that while she dislikes boasting, she must prove her worth.
Elise nods in shock, agreeing to let the girl demonstrate her full capabilities.
A sudden, quick ping sounding as Minervina begins scanning every object in the room.
She identifies a hidden detection spell on a statue and a rare ritual bell.
Minervina points out a fake legendary whip, exposing it as a clever counterfeit.
Elise is identified as the Vice Guild Master, and she is thoroughly rattled by Minervina.
Elise realizes the girl is neither a mage nor a standard technician, yet knows everything.
She begins to ask a question as she starts to suspect Minervina's true identity.
Minervina stands tall, looking every bit like the legendary sage from the old records.
A sudden, soft sigh sounding as Elise stares, still unable to believe her eyes. A sudden, soft swish sounding as she adjusts her HUD. Minervina stands confidently amid a bloom of flowers. A sudden, sharp tap sounding as someone rises quickly.
Elise bows deeply while offering her professional services.
Elise notes the Richter family's enduring nobility despite their fall.
A close view reveals hands resting on a table.
Elise reacts with confusion to a surprising statement.
Minervina sits with her hands clasped, looking composed. Minervina questions if she is being asked to hide. Elise suggests the Imperial Palace would offer exceptional treatment.
Elise ponders the timing of Minervina's sage-like awakening.
Narrative text details the Richter family's fall from grace. Concerns arise regarding the palace learning of the sage. The situation threatens to become far more than awkward.
Elise apologizes, stating they cannot work together despite her talent.
Minervina playfully asks about a troublesome item causing stress. Minervina offers to solve the guild leader's specific problem.
Elise wonders if the girl can read her mind.
Elise describes an ancient box bought recently for appraisal.
She admits to being stuck regarding its mysterious magic.
Elise questions if employment is the price for solving it.
Elise privately fears Minervina might be a dangerous individual. Minervina maintains a cheerful and knowing expression throughout. Minervina repeats Elise's title with a curious, lighthearted tone.
Elise agrees to hire her if the appraisal succeeds.
Minervina celebrates the deal with a joyful exclamation. A sudden, soft rustle sounding as Elise produces a quaff. Elise explains the need for security in secret areas. Elise blindfolds Minervina, who appreciates her thorough professional nature. The world dissolves into a sea of abstract patterns. A sudden, quick tap sounding as they walk Pindry. Minervina realizes her system windows rely heavily on eyesight. A label identifies the girl's standard field of vision. Minervina marvels at the vast sea of available information. The view focuses briefly on her small, moving feet. Her current vision is described as being completely blurred. Minervina resolves to be extremely cautious in the darkness. The scene shifts to a long, quiet hallway. A sudden rhythmic tap sounding as they walk via rope. Minervina questions the intense security and the strange walk.
Minervina wonders aloud how much further they must go.
A sudden, sharp tap sounding as their feet stop.
Minervina gasps in shock upon removing the black blindfold.
They find a room seemingly built to imprison a box.
The system identifies the object as a cursed box.
Minervina notes its terrifying description and strange dark aura. She questions where such a magically trapped item originated.
Minervina questions Elise's sanity, while Elise praises her perception.
A sudden, sharp tap sounding as she steps forward. A flashing warning confirms entry into a dangerous area.
A sudden, loud sounding as Minervina gasps from a sharp, unseen pressure.
A sudden, soft gasp sounding as she struggles to catch her breath.
A system window flashes a red warning that she has entered a danger zone.
Elise calls out to Lady Minervina in a state of high alert concern.
Minervina recalls the cold, hopeless sensation of her previous life's final moments. A sudden, sharp gasp sounding as the girl chokes on the oppressive atmosphere.
She fears that she might die helplessly in this world as well.
The system window announces that it is currently adjusting the encounter's difficulty.
Glowing digital patterns process the data to counter the surrounding threat. A new notification declares that a mere curse cannot overcome a player.
Minervina asks what is happening as her physical distress begins to fade.
A sudden, soft sigh sounding as she realizes she can breathe freely again.
Elise asks if she is all right, and Minervina explains she just temporarily lost her breath.
Minervina recognizes the curse's source and wonders about the nature of this world.
Elise questions if a sage can possess such abilities while Minervina acts confused.
Elise admits that everyone else who encountered the chest immediately fainted.
Minervina complains that she should have been warned about the danger much sooner.
Minervina stares intently at the ominous floating chest inside the cage.
She wonders if being a player makes her a more powerful calamity than the curse. A sudden, quick tap sounding as she steps closer to the locked container.
She decides to stop overthinking and focus on inspecting the items inside.
The system identifies the Wraith King's orb, a cursed relic that can rot the land.
Elise and her assistants react with visible shock as the orb is identified.
A translucent blue window appears between the two women as they talk.
A quest notification appears, offering gold for using the orb to destroy the world. Minervina is visibly irritated by the system's demand for a destruction quest.
Minervina warns against burying the orb, and Elise asks about the chest's active spells.
The system lists the specific items needed to break the chest's protective magic.
Minervina recites that breaking the spell requires a fang, a wheel, and a candle.
Her companions are amazed by her revolutionary method of analyzing the seal.
A man tells the guildmaster they can break the seal, and Elise commands it.
The staff members enthusiastically agree to begin the ritual at once.
5 mages stand around the cage and prepare to release their magic. A sudden loud whoosh sounding as a blinding light erupts from the cage.
Intricate magical circles glow brightly on the floor as the spell activates.
A sudden, sharp chime sounding as the box vibrates against the pedestal.
Someone asks if it worked, and Minervina thinks the situation is finally resolved.
Wisps of dark, smoky energy begin to rise from the surface of the chest.
A sudden, loud boom sounding as another flare of intense light occurs.
Minervina's eyes widen as she notices something unexpected happening within the light.
A sudden, soft silence sounding as a lingering question mark fills the air.
Minervina panics as she realizes the ritual didn't go exactly as she expected.
A sudden, sharp flinch sounding as the girl recoils from the box.
The system reports that only one of the 7 seals has been successfully broken.
Elise asks what happened, and Minervina explains that multiple seals still need to be broken.
Elise is stunned to learn that there are still more layers of protection left.
A sudden quick grab sounding as Elise suddenly seizes Minervina's hands.
Elise is ecstatic, shouting that no one has ever managed to break a seal before.
Elise praises her for identifying the remaining seals when every other mage had failed. The staff members celebrate the incredible success of their new talented appraiser. Elise jokingly threatens a pay cut to anyone who dared to call her crazy for hiring the girl.
Elise's eyes sparkle with gold as she revels in the girl's incredible potential.
Minervina responds with a deadpan expression, looking thoroughly unimpressed by the Vice Guildmaster's enthusiasm.
Elise coughs into her hand and admits that she got a bit carried away in the moment.
Elise smiles warmly and declares that they look forward to working with their new appraiser.
Minervina wears a mysterious and knowing smile as she prepares for her new life.
A close view reveals the girl smiling brightly, seemingly content with her current situation. The guild hall is a bustling hub of activity, filled with many different people going about their business. Minervina continues to beam with joy, appearing genuinely happy about her new employment. She is particularly excited to learn that the guild even provides a separate dormitory for staff. The staff dormitory is a grand and sturdy stone building situated within the city.
Minervina is shocked to discover the short working hours and realizes this world has better welfare than modern Earth.
She holds a massive bag of gold and calculates her enormous annual salary, dreaming of a life of leisure. A sudden, heavy thud sounding as Elise slumps forward, feeling like she was the one who got swindled. Elise sits alone in her study, reflecting on how Minervina's entire personality shifted once contract negotiations began. Elise recalls Minervina sitting calmly at the table, becoming a different person the moment a lower salary was suggested.
The girl had pointedly asked if that was really how little the guild valued her unique abilities.
Minervina had looked at the proposed benefits with a cold and clinical detachment.
She reminded Elise that high-level appraisers are rare and that her lack of magic use allows her to work tirelessly.
When the topic of occasional overtime arose, Minervina's expression had turned dangerously dark. The girl had flatly refused the contract under those conditions, stating she would never compromise on her personal time.
Elise admits to herself that she never meant to exploit the girl, only to get a better deal for the guild.
Elise notes that she has met many high-ranking nobles, but none quite like this girl. She marvels at Minervina's confidence and instincts, questioning if she is really from a fallen noble family. Minervina expresses her satisfaction with the final agreement they reached. A sudden quick click sounding as Minervina leaves the room, promising to work hard for the guild's growth.
A sudden soft sigh sounding as Elise leans back, worrying about the risk of clashing with the royal family.
The Vice Guildmaster remains focused on her desk, determined to keep their new asset a secret.
Elise holds a peacock heather pen, looking professional and ready to manage her duties. Elise thinks of a mysterious man, deciding she must inform him that someone finally recognized the special chalice. A white messenger bird flies across a busy city street toward a man sitting at a table. A sudden, soft brush sounding as a hand reaches out to receive the arriving message. The bird lands on the finger of a blonde man who finds the news about the girl very interesting. A close view reveals the handwritten letter the man has just received. The blonde man with blue eyes smiles confidently, intrigued by the sudden appearance of a talented sage.
Back at the guild, Minervina sits with her arms crossed, ready to begin her workday. She indulges in a pleasant daydream about her salary and becoming incredibly wealthy.
A sudden soft tap sounding as someone approaches the girl to get her attention. Minervina looks up and wonders about the identity of the two women standing before her. She briefly recalls seeing an older man shouting at the brown-haired woman earlier. The women approach Minervina to thank her for her earlier assistance with the angry customer. The blue-haired girl offers to treat Minervina to apple wine at a pub after work. Minervina is delighted by the prospect of drinks and new friends.
She reflects on how she always felt excluded in her past life and was never invited out like this.
The two women wait eagerly for her response, looking hopeful and friendly. Minervina happily accepts the invitation, and the two women celebrate her decision. The scene shifts to the exterior of a cozy building known as the Six People's Pub. Minervina notes that the name reminds her of the energy drinks she relied on in her previous overworked life. A sudden, quick rustle sounding as she looks around the busy pub for her new companions. A sudden, loud bang sounding as the brown-haired girl bursts into the room calling for her.
Minervina asks what is wrong as her colleague arrives in a frantic panic.
The brown-haired woman struggles to speak through her tears and heavy gasping. The girl cries out in despair that Lyra has suddenly disappeared. Minervina is shocked as the woman explains Lyra vanished after entering a dark alley. Minervina urges the woman to calm down while worrying about recent local kidnappings. The purple-haired girl's eyes widen as she spots something suspicious across the room. The system identifies a bartender named Jurgen who is secretly linked to illegal gambling. Minervina hesitates, fearing that acting too rashly on her suspicions could easily backfire. A sudden, loud bang sounding as the entrance to the building swings wide open. A sudden, quick tap sounding as a mysterious figure steps firmly into the room.
Minervina is visibly stunned by the sudden arrival of the new visitor.
A tall man with silver hair and a dark cloak lowers his hood. A glowing golden system window identifies the man as an exceptionally important figure. Minervina notes his status window matches a princess's color, signaling his immense narrative importance. The system reveals the man is Duke Jahik, an elite investigator tracking illegal operations. Minervina tells her colleague to go home while the woman worries about the plan. The girl insists on handling the matter alone, silencing her friend's frantic questions. The brown-haired woman admits that everyone has noticed Minervina's unique and sharp abilities. The woman begs her to be careful before Minervina confirms she understands the risk. Minervina watches as her friend runs off, feeling the situation is finally under control. She turns her gaze back to the bar where the suspicious business continues. Minervina pulls up her hood and carefully moves into position to observe the target.
She stares intently at the interactions happening between the bartender and the Duke.
The system identifies a fake ticket for an illegal arena hidden near a bottle. Minervina confirms that the incriminating evidence is exactly what she needed to find.
She walks purposefully toward the man, ready to disrupt his current investigation.
Minervina calls out that his information is a lie, causing the man to stop. A a sudden quick tap sounding as the man turns around to face the intruder.
Minervina greets him with a confident look, unbothered by his intimidating presence.
The scene shifts to the city exterior as the sun begins to set.
The silver-haired man demands a more detailed explanation for her sudden and bold claim.
Minervina thinks to herself how perfectly the man fits a fantasy world aesthetic.
She is momentarily distracted by his handsome face while recalling rumors about his lineage. She remains silent and composed as she processes the man's formidable presence.
Minervina is shocked to see he possesses a game-breaking buff blessed by a goddess.
She awkwardly clears her throat while the man waits for her to speak.
The Duke asks why she chose to share such dangerous information with a stranger.
His hand grips his sword as he warns her against giving a foolish answer.
Minervina looks him in the eye and flatly states that she needs his help.
She explains her friend's kidnapping and asks if he's a man she can trust.
The man is momentarily taken aback by the girl's blunt and urgent request. He expresses regret for her situation, but refuses to act on uncertain or rash information.
Minervina stares him down with a gaze full of unwavering and cold determination.
The man is surprised by her intensity, questioning why she is so insistent. He argues that he cannot involve a civilian, but she points out the existing danger.
Minervina offers a deal, claiming she can lead him to the arena's secret base.
The Duke falls into deep thought, weighing the risks of trusting the strange girl. He lets out a weary sigh, appearing to give in to her persistence.
He agrees to let her help, but only regarding the starting location of the search. Minervina gives a satisfied look, ready to embark on the rescue mission.
Minervina notes the Duke's skeptical gaze but promises the truth will be revealed upon their arrival.
A sudden quick whoosh sounding as the girl turns her head toward a faint noise.
She recognizes the mysterious man from earlier and remains on high alert.
Jahig realizes his subordinate provided the initial lead and sighs at the risk of trusting a civilian. The two arrive at the base of a massive and imposing stone structure.
Minervina suggests climbing to a high vantage point to gather information on the capital. A tall, ancient clock tower looms over the city streets as the sun disappears.
A sudden, steady, rhythmic thud sounding as the pair begins their long ascent up the spiral stairs.
The Duke questions why he is following a stranger, wondering if exhaustion is clouding his better judgment.
Jahig catches himself staring at the girl as a sudden realization begins to dawn on him.
The girl's striking pink eyes seem to hold a depth beyond her years.
Minervina reflects on her sharp senses and her lifelong ability to read the hidden intentions in people's eyes.
She has seen many emotions reflected in others, ranging from deep affection to genuine admiration.
She has also sensed hostility, but finds something uniquely captivating about the Duke's intense gaze. The girl announces they are nearly at their destination with a calm and reassuring smile.
A close view reveals the Duke's piercing blue eye as he processes her words.
He finds her pink, glass-like eyes to be remarkably clear and transparent.
A sudden, soft gasp sounding as the man prepares to speak to his companion.
They pause on the stairs, their contrasting silhouettes illuminated by the dim light of the tower.
Minervina remains composed, her expression unreadable as she waits for his reaction.
Jahig urges her to move faster so they can complete their urgent task.
A sudden, long creak sounding as the heavy door at the top of the tower finally opens.
The girl's eyes reflect the shimmering lights of the vast city spread out below them. A sudden, soft rustle sounding as the night wind whips through the open arches of the tower.
They reach the balcony, overlooking a sea of glowing buildings and dark, narrow streets. Minervina confirms that the high ground provides the perfect view for locating the secret gambling hall.
She focuses her vision, and digital-like squares begin to highlight specific points of interest across the capital.
The system identifies the illegal gambling hall run by Migdala Magic, where Lyra is currently being held.
Minervina feels a wave of dizziness from the overwhelming amount of information flooding her senses.
A sudden, quick scrape sounding as the girl loses her footing and stumbles backward.
She gasps in alarm as the ground seems to vanish beneath her. Jahig shouts a frantic warning as he realizes the girl is about to fall.
A sudden, sharp slap sounding as a hand reaches out with lightning speed to catch her.
Minervina catches her breath, realizing just how close she came to a dangerous accident.
A sudden, soft tap sounding as the Duke pulls her back to safety, their faces inches apart. Standing this close to him, the girl finds his identity is now undeniably clear.
The fine details of the Duke's expensive and ornate cloak are revealed in the moonlight. She recognizes the man's true status as an exarch, confirming her earlier suspicions.
Minervina looks up at him with a mischievous and knowing smile.
Jahig admits he hasn't been asked such a question in years and declares he is not easily defeated.
The girl insists on coming along for the rescue, refusing to stay behind.
The man states he will handle the rescue with his men, but Minervina questions if he truly trusts her.
A sudden, soft crackle sounding as a subordinate contacts the Duke to report unusual movements nearby.
The Duke listens intently as the report confirms that the building is indeed suspicious.
Minervina wears a smug expression, knowing her information has already been proven correct.
Jahig demands to know how she obtains such accuracy, but she simply tells him to lead the way.
The girl's gaze remains steady, her eyes glowing with an inner light of confidence.
The Duke finds himself momentarily captivated by her gaze once again.
He hardens his expression, pushing aside his questions to focus on the mission at hand. Jahig formally declares that their contract is established, signaling the start of their joint operation.
Minervina tells Jahig to hurry and name her.
The girl instructs him to use his left arm.
Jahig looks confused by her bold demand. He realizes she is not acting out of malice.
Jahig leaps high into the dark night sky.
The pair falls quickly toward the city streets.
They move swiftly across the massive building roofs. Jahig carries the girl easily while running fast.
Minervina is stunned by the man's incredible speed.
She notes his great power is quite impressive. Minervina focuses her gaze on the target building.
A sudden, sharp tap sounding as they land. She points out the target and suggests hiding. Minervina asks about the famous fugitive's background. She admits she just arrived in the capital.
Jahig agrees to explain the dangerous situation clearly.
Magdala is described as a vicious, ruthless criminal.
The villain leads a group of dangerous followers.
Darkness stretches over the quiet city streets below.
Minervina wonders how such a criminal remains free. Jahig explains they lack enough manpower for results.
He describes the villain's clever methods escape.
Minervina acknowledges that the criminal is quite smart.
A glowing system window appears before the girl. The quest offers gold for helping Magdala escape.
Minervina decides the gold reward is very tempting.
She plans to save her friend and gold. Minervina pauses as she considers her next move. She asks if they should raid the building. Jahig warns that a raid will cause casualties. Jahig admits the validity of her potential criticism. He refuses to offer any excuses for failure. He notes that her friend is in danger.
Minervina looks forward with a serious, focused gaze. The Emperor disregards the capital's urgent safety needs.
A fist clenches as treason is mentioned darkly. Minervina shows a confident and very knowing smile.
She asks if he wants her secret plan.
Minervina repeats her offer to tell him her plan.
Jahig reacts with great surprise and deep confusion.
He questions if she really has better ideas.
Minervina worries about her true identity being seen.
The system displays the arena's complex floor plan. 2 guards are shown faking their intoxicated state.
Minervina expresses her appreciation for the system's help.
She provides exact locations for the kidnapped victims.
Jahig asks about the villain's usual escape routes.
Minervina reasons that a hideout must be nearby. Jahig prepares to engage the guards with force.
Minervina asks if he truly trusts her expertise.
The Duke agrees to let her take the lead for now.
Minervina points upward and commands the Duke to follow her instructions from now on.
A sudden soft rustle sounding as the night wind passes through the quiet city streets.
Minervina reflects on the novelty of being held while directing the Duke to change their path.
Jahig looks flustered as the girl holds on to him.
A close view reveals the girl's glowing pink eye. A system window reveals that Magdalene's secret hideout is known only to 5 executives.
Minervina smiles, confident that they now have a real chance at success.
The girl excitedly asks if they should start the operation now.
A sudden, steady rhythmic thud sounding as someone walks toward 2 guards sitting by a door.
One guard alerts his companion, Andre, that someone is approaching, while the other hopes for a beauty. A sudden, sharp tap sounding as the girl adjustments her appearance and steps into view.
Minervina assumes a vulnerable, blushing expression as she plays her part.
The guards are impressed by her looks, thinking she could be a valuable catch.
Minervina claims she saw a blue-haired lady earlier, prompting Jules to ask if it's true. The girl feigns desperation, asking where the guards saw her friend Rira. The guard invites the girl inside to talk instead of staying out in the open.
Minervina flashes a smug, hidden grin as her plan begins to work.
She laughs softly and asks if their arrangement is acceptable. A sudden, steady, rhythmic thud sounding as the guards lead the girl toward the building's entrance.
A sudden sharp tap sounding as they step into the dark interior. A sudden sharp tap sounding as a hand grabs the girl's shoulder and a voice calls her naive.
The man mocks her for walking right in and warns her to follow his words to avoid trouble.
Minervina acts terrified, shivering as she submissively agrees to the man's demands.
A sudden, steady, rhythmic thud sounding as they walk deeper into the stone corridor. A system window identifies a secret passage as Minervina notes the villain's thoroughness.
The girl recalls her plan to avoid a direct raid, explaining that Magdala would use the secret passage to escape.
A sudden, sharp knock sounding as someone announces their arrival to a man named Gilder.
Reiner Gilder opens the door and questions why the guards have left their post.
Gilder stares in silence, his expression filled with sudden shock.
Minervina maintains her act, claiming they only wanted to help Mr. Magdala.
A sudden, sharp grab sounding as someone is roughly seized by the arm.
A sudden, soft gasp sounding as the girl is startled by the abrupt movement.
Gilder scolds the men for leaving the door unguarded for a civilian, but they try to justify their actions.
Minervina watches the bickering men, thinking the entire scene is pathetic.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft rustle sounding as she notices papers on a nearby desk.
System windows reveal a disgruntled message from Liner Gilder and a sentimental letter from his wife, Lurica. A sudden, long creak sounding as Gilder approaches the girl, asking about the friend she was supposed to meet. A sudden, soft tap sounding as the girl reaches for the letters and Gilder sharply tells her to put them down. Minervina drops her act and coldly demands to know the location of Mr. Magdala. She notes that the numerous system windows make the situation feel more like a game than a threat.
The girl calls the man by his full name, Liner Gilder, causing him to react with extreme confusion.
She mocks his lack of promotion and mentions his wife Lurica, leaving Gilder completely stunned. A panicked Gilder demands the secret password, while the system reveals it is the sick lion roars.
A close view reveals the girl's sharp and focused gaze.
Minervina stares him down, prepared to deliver her final blow. She changes her tactic, warning Gilder that Duke Jahig is planning a sudden raid on the location.
Gilder is overcome with terror at the mere mention of the Duke's name. The girl demands to be guided to Magdala immediately, and the terrified man frantically agrees.
Minervina adds one final, ominous thought as she prepares to follow him. Minervina identifies a blue-haired captive as her subordinate and orders her immediate release, while a panicked guard quickly offers his apologies. A sudden, frantic rush sounding as the guard hurries away to follow the girl's instructions, signaling the success of her first move. Minervina looks toward the inner chambers, determined that it is finally time to confront the true leader of the criminal group. The girl wears a small, satisfied smile as she confidently approaches the next and most dangerous stage of her plan. A sudden, heavy thud sounding as a man is kicked violently across a room, sending a spray of blood into the air.
Madame Magdala looks down at her victim with cold indifference as he desperately begs for mercy on the floor.
The man's voice trembles in the darkness, pleading with the ruthless leader for his life. A sudden sharp pierce sounding as a blade is thrust with lethal force into a shadow cast upon the wall. Magdala stands over the fallen man, coldly declaring that he has spoken far too much for someone who betrayed her. The criminal leader turns her gaze away, ordering her remaining men to get rid of the traitor immediately. A sudden soft swish sounding as Magdala sits down with a drink, reflecting on the various rats that continue to plague her.
She notes that no matter how many are killed, more enemies always seem to appear, and she questions the security of their money.
A sudden rhythmic tremble sounding as a subordinate assures her that even Duke Jahig cannot easily access their hidden bank accounts.
Magdala chuckles darkly, clearly amused by her perceived upper hand in the ongoing game of cat and mouse.
She recalls with pride how she has already managed to evade the Duke's capture twice before.
The criminal notes that their recent trading information was leaked at a local bar, though she remains unfazed.
Magdala takes a drink, confident that the Duke is currently wasting his time chasing a fake lead to a dead-end location.
A sudden, soft hiccup sounding as the woman laughs at the ease of her operations, just as a subordinate enters to interrupt. A sudden, soft gulp sounding as Magdala finishes her drink and is informed that someone has come to meet her. A sudden, quiet pause sounding as she demands to know the identity of the person seeking an audience with her. A sudden, sharp stop sounding as Magdala realizes the visitor is not Wayne himself, but rather one of his subordinates. A sudden, loud drip sounding as she reacts with fury, finding it insulting to be asked to meet with someone of unknown status.
The guard explains that the girl claims to have critical information regarding the location of their next hidden base. Magdala finds the claim highly suspicious, wondering how a mere subordinate could have access to information reserved for executives.
She waves a dismissive hand, commanding her men to let the mysterious visitor into the room. A sudden, long creak sounding as Minervina enters the dimly lit hideout, looking remarkably calm and humble. A sudden, soft swoosh sounding as the girl reveals her face, meeting the cold gaze of the criminal leader.
Magdala scoffs at her appearance, mocking the idea that a noble-looking girl could be a common criminal subordinate.
A sudden, violent slam sounding as Magdala's hand crashes down onto the table, shattering the glass beneath her fist.
A sudden, sharp whistling sounding as she swings a jagged piece of glass toward Minervina in a threatening gesture.
A sudden, loud shatter sounding as the glass is destroyed, causing Minervina to gasp as shards fly past her face. Magdala looms over the girl, fiercely demanding that she take back her unbelievable claims. The woman continues to mock the girl, insisting that she is clearly a highborn noble and questioning her intelligence. A sudden, heavy thwump sounding as a guard reacts with shock while Minervina reminds herself to stay calm and rely on her knowledge. A sudden, soft swish sounding as the girl gathers her long dress, preparing to perform a formal and respectful gesture. A sudden, dull kneel sounding as Minervina bows low, introducing herself as Minera and stating she works under Mr. Wayne. She looks up with an expression of delicate sincerity. successfully maintaining her role as a humble messenger.
A sudden, sharp startle sounding as Magdala finds herself caught off guard by the girl's total lack of fear.
Despite her surprise, the leader still finds the idea of a noble servant to be a completely unbelievable story.
Minervina explains that she took a massive personal risk by coming to the hideout completely alone to deliver her news.
She claims that her boss, Wayne, is secretly plotting a betrayal due to his displeasure over the local distribution rights.
A sudden, sharp pause sounding as Magdala realizes the girl's information matches a report from her own secret spy.
Even with the corroborating evidence, the criminal leader remains wary and asks for a reason to trust her visitor.
A sudden, light tap sounding as Minervina prepares to deliver her final, convincing argument to win over the dangerous woman.
The scene shifts to the quiet city streets outside, where Jahig and his men are observing the building from a distance.
A subordinate expresses his skepticism, noting that the situation feels extremely suspicious and potentially dangerous.
He points out that the girl is clearly highly intelligent and not someone who would be easily persuaded by others.
Jahig admits that he originally shared those same thoughts when he first encountered the mysterious girl. A close-up view of the Duke's eye reveals his deep contemplation as he considers the girl's true potential. A sudden, soft chuckle sounding as Jahig smiles to himself, finding the girl's bold and unpredictable nature increasingly fascinating.
A sudden, quick dust sounding as the black-haired man watches the girl with a look of extreme skepticism.
A sudden, sharp turn sounding as he decides to question Minervina further after their current task is finished. A sudden, steady step sounding as the group focuses on capturing Madame Magdala's full attention. The purple-haired girl wears a radiant, peaceful smile.
Duke Jahig remains focused on his immediate next move.
A sudden, sharp laugh sounding as the villain offers to test the girl's claims.
A sudden, soft swish sounding as Magdala draws a sharp dagger from her belt.
A sudden soft rustle sounding as she mentions updating her secret security code with Wayne.
Magdala points the blade at her, warning that failure to answer means she will never leave. The woman mocks the girl's highborn appearance while keeping the lethal weapon aimed at her throat.
Minervina calmly provides her answer with total confidence. A sudden, sharp frown sounding as the criminal leader notices the girl's lack of fear.
She fiercely demands to know the specific password Wayne allegedly shared with his messenger.
A sudden, soft whoosh sounding as the girl claims the secret is far too obvious. The system reveals the password to be "Strangle the Black Lion." A sudden, soft swish sounding as Minervina recites the current and previous codes with perfect accuracy. A sudden, sharp swing sounding as Magdala lashes out with her dagger.
A sudden, sharp stab sounding as the blade strikes a nearby surface. Image 869. The criminal leader and the girl stare each other down in a moment of intense silence.
A sudden, soft fwish sounding as Magdala admits the girl is surprisingly certain of her facts.
The leader curses Wayne for his betrayal, but the girl notes he is not the only traitor.
Minervina identifies Mallow and Ella as additional subordinates who have turned against their boss.
The girl claims that a large portion of the organization has decided to rebel.
Magdala is stunned to hear that even her most trusted executives have turned on her.
Minervina explains that the betrayal was sparked by Magdala's heartless treatment of a subordinate's lover.
The criminal leader expresses fury at the idea of being betrayed over such sentimental reasons.
A sudden, soft glance sounding as the girl realizes her psychological manipulation is working.
A sudden, quiet pause sounding as she reveals that Duke Jahig has entered the fray.
The news of the Grand Duke's presence sends a wave of shock through the realm. A sudden rhythmic tremble sounding as the girl warns that the Duke's arrival is imminent.
A sudden violent bam sounding as an explosion or impact rocks the building. Magdala demands an update while the girl thinks the arrival of her ally is perfectly timed.
A sudden loud bam sounding as a guard frantically calls for Madame Magdala's attention.
A sudden, sharp stab sounding as the guard confirms the Duke's knights are already outside.
A sudden, sharp clank sounding as a fierce battle erupts just beyond the room's entrance.
Magdala is overwhelmed with confusion and rage, wondering why the Duke isn't chasing her fake lead.
The realization of total betrayal begins to sink in for the cornered leader.
Duke Jahig looks out over the scene of the ongoing confrontation.
The silver-haired man appears battle-hardened and determined to finish the job.
Magdala grunts in pain as the girl mocks the massive headache she must be feeling.
Minervina recalls the secure bank location where the group's funds are kept.
The girl thinks running away to a new base is the villain's only logical option left.
Minervina's gaze remains sharp and analytical as she watches her plan unfold.
A sudden loud bam sounding as the system reveals Magdala's desperate attempt to recruit the girl.
A sudden soft smile sounding as the girl maintains her innocent and polite facade.
A sudden heavy huff sounding as the girl admits she is privately terrified by the danger.
Minervina keeps her cheerful act up even as the situation reaches its breaking point.
Magdala orders her men to sacrifice themselves while she flees through the secret exit.
A sudden, steady step sounding as the leader demands that the girl follow her immediately.
A sudden, sharp slap sounding as a hand reaches for a hidden mechanism in the wall.
Magdala warns the girl not to delay as they prepare to vanish into the shadows.
A sudden, soft rustle sounding as Madame Magdala pulls open a secret hatch in the floor.
A sudden, rhythmic thud sounding as the two women descend into a dark stone passage.
A sudden, sharp gasp sounding as Minervina struggles to keep up with the criminal leader's frantic pace.
A sudden, heavy thud sounding as Magdala lets out a manic laugh, feeling victorious in her escape.
The criminal boasts about defeating Archduke Jahig 3 times, claiming she is blessed by the goddess herself.
She gloats that even the talented Archduke has failed to capture the legendary Magdala magic.
A sudden, heavy thud sounding as Minervina pants for breath while Magdala claims the girl as her own partner.
Magdala excitedly suggests they plan their next big heist together once they reach safety.
The leader's smile vanishes as she opens the final door and hears a familiar, cold voice from the shadows.
A sudden, loud bam sounding as an unseen force strikes Magdala, followed by a sudden, violent crash sounding as she hits the ground.
The woman clutches her bruised face in shock, desperately asking what is happening. A sudden, heavy slam sounding as a black boot lands near her head, and a voice announces that her face is finally visible.
A sudden, sharp smack sounding as Archduke Jahig stands before her in his full noble attire, identifying her by name.
A sudden light pat sounding as Magdala trembles, wondering how the Duke is always so incredibly punctual. A sudden soft swish sounding as the purple-haired girl walks past the defeated criminal without a word of comfort.
The realization of total betrayal hits Magdala as she watches the girl she thought was an ally.
A sudden quiet humph sounding as Minervina looks back coldly, stating she was never on the criminal's side. Magdala stares at her discarded dagger on the floor, her mind racing with murderous intent. A sudden tight clench sounding as the criminal grabs the weapon, her eyes filled with desperate rage.
She lunges at the girl, screaming that she is an arrogant woman who deserves to die.
A sudden sharp slap sounding as Jahig instantly moves to protect the girl, questioning when the attack started.
A sudden firm press sounding as the Duke pins Magdala to the ground, neutralizing the threat with ease.
The silver-haired man confirms the situation is handled as his subordinates acknowledge his command from the darkness.
A sudden steady thud sounding as Minervina watches the guards take control, noting she advised the woman to surrender. A sudden pained sounding as Jahig orders his men to rescue the captives while he deals with the remaining criminals. The scene shifts to the peaceful city skyline as the morning sun begins to rise over the buildings. A sudden, quiet humph sounding as the purple-haired girl wears a satisfied and serene expression.
A sudden bright shine sounding as a system notification confirms the successful rescue of Magdala from the speculation grounds.
The quest screen details the rewards for taking the wanted criminals safely out of the area, granting 700 gold.
A sudden, light laugh sounding as Minervina watches a guard lead Magdala away, privately thanking the woman for the gold reward.
A sudden, rhythmic pat sounding as the girl walks past a group of freed captives who are being tended to.
Minervina spots the blue-haired girl, Agnes, sleeping safely among the group of rescued women.
A sudden, soft mumble sounding as she whispers to herself that everything has turned out fine.
The girl acknowledges that the success of the rescue mission is entirely thanks to her persona, Manera.
Minervina and Jahig walk together through the quiet streets, the tension of the battle finally fading.
A sudden, casual shrug sounding as the girl admits that the operation plan might not have succeeded otherwise.
Jahig offers a small, genuine smile while agreeing that the plan likely would have failed without her help.
The girl pauses in surprise, caught off guard by the Duke's rare show of kindness and praise.
A sudden, quiet humph sounding as Jahig blushes and admits he is shy about receiving compliments. A sudden, quick swoosh sounding as Minervina politely excuses herself to rest while the Duke asks her to wait.
Jahig stops her, his expression turning serious as he asks if her previous claims were truly accurate.
He questions how she knew about the secret bases, and she simply replies that he never told her.
The girl explains that being good at escaping is different from being cornered, which leads to predictable behavior.
She notes that a genius at escaping would naturally have secret bases that even their own officers wouldn't know about.
Minervina observes that cowards always prioritize escape routes, and she correctly guessed the existence of a private hideout. A chibi version of the girl appears as she admits she was simply thinking from the criminal's perspective. Jahig watches her with a look of deep contemplation, seemingly impressed by her analytical mind. He thinks to himself that someone as honest as her shouldn't be able to understand the mind of a criminal so easily. A sudden heavy step closer sounding as Jahig looms over her, declaring her to be incredibly persistent. A sudden startled sounding as the Duke reaches out to stop her from leaving, demanding just a moment more of her time.
The purple-haired girl looks down with a contemplative and slightly somber expression.
A piercing silver eye watches intently from the shadows. Minervina stands alone in the middle of a quiet city street, looking lost in her thoughts. A gloved hand rests over a chest adorned with a magnificent jeweled brooch.
The purple-haired girl and the Archduke stand facing each other in a moment of silent understanding.
Jahig looks down with a soft, almost vulnerable expression, his usual coldness fading. The girl's lips part slightly as she prepares to react to his rare show of kindness. Minervina reflects on how long it has been since she heard a genuine compliment and how uplifting it feels. A gentle blush creeps across the girl's face as she offers a faint, sincere smile. The Duke remains silent, his expression unreadable but focused entirely on the girl before him. His eyes soften further, showing a hint of a blush as he processes her quiet gratitude. A small, genuine smile tugs at the corners of the Archduke's mouth. A chibi version of the Duke thanks Minera and asks her to visit his mansion, but she politely declines his invitation. Jahig asks why she won't visit for fun, while Minervina looks skeptical of his friendly overture. A sudden, quick swoosh sounding as the silver-haired man turns to face her more directly. He tells the girl that formal speech does not suit her, suggesting he prefers a more informal bond. Minervina wonders to herself what a visit for fun would even look like for someone with her secrets. A sudden, light swoosh sounding as she turns away, worried her true talents might be discovered by the Duke.
The purple-haired girl looks back over her shoulder, her expression a mix of caution and lingering curiosity.
She clutches her cloak tightly, her face flushed with a mix of embarrassment and determination. A panoramic view reveals the grand architecture and lush gardens of the Archduke's massive estate. The quiet of the mansion is interrupted by the sound of firm, rhythmic footsteps approaching a private chamber. A sudden, violent bang sounding as a silver-haired woman in a black uniform bursts in to report the capture of Magdala Magic. Archduke Jahig is shown meticulously adjusting his white gloves while surrounded by several attentive maids.
The silver-haired man turns his head slightly, his gaze cold and sharp as he listens to the urgent report.
The high-ranking woman makes herself comfortable on a plush sofa, her presence commanding and casual. A narrative bubble notes that she sat down nonchalantly despite knowing the Duke was in the middle of changing his clothes. The silver-haired woman tells Jahig he should take pride in the successful capture of the notorious criminal. The Duke takes a seat across from his uninvited guest, his expression formal and guarded. The woman gestures dramatically as she discusses the Emperor's lack of ability and the precarious state of the throne. Jahig questions the logic of doing something for others under the guise of serving the country's interests. The silver-haired woman lets out a heavy, tired sigh over the perceived lack of ambition in the people around her. Her red eyes gleam with a mix of frustration and the weight of her hidden agendas. Dark silhouettes illustrate the history of Emperor Felix, who is revealed to be the woman's own brother. The narrative shifts to Queen Ari Schroeder and the complex dynamic between her two sons. Silhouettes show the two princes standing back to back, representing their starkly opposing natures and fates. Lars was loved for his good nature and highly regarded, while Anton was shunned for his violent tendencies. It was only natural for the queen to favor Lars as the rightful and most capable successor to the throne. However, Lars refused the crown, leaving the position of crown prince to fall back to the first son, Anton.
The queen's delay in appointing a successor was seen as a clear and public rejection of Anton's work.
Anton's resentment and sense of inferiority grew steadily as his official appointment was indefinitely postponed. A dark silhouette shows Lars falling victim to a sudden and bloody fate.
Lars died in an unexpected accident, leaving his mother in grief and the path to the throne open.
The queen followed her beloved son in death, and in the end, Anton ascended to the throne as emperor. Anton became the emperor, but he remained in a position where his own mother never truly acknowledged him.
Over time, his deep-seated anger and sense of inferiority never disappeared but only grew more powerful.
The silver-haired woman explains that this bitterness has now been entirely pushed onto the exarch. She concludes that even the emperor himself would struggle to maintain control over the powerful Grand Duke. A close-up highlights the intricate details and luxury of the Archduke's formal noble attire and jeweled medals. Jahig stares forward in heavy silence, his mind clearly weighing the dangerous political implications of her words. Elise Barrett mentions Minervina's name while meeting with Archduke Jahig. Jahig considers the girl's extraordinary magical abilities and her status as the sage of her house. Dark memories of the Lethor family tragedy cast a long shadow over her mysterious past.
A sudden, quiet humph sounding as Jahig resolves to encounter the girl once more.
A sudden rhythmic tap-tap sounding as he ponders the future of their professional bond.
The Duke closes his eyes in a moment of deep, silent thought.
Jahig offers a rare, subtle smile while recalling the girl's uncharacteristic bluntness.
Elise watches the Archduke with a calm and discerning gaze.
The silver-haired man expresses his sincere hopes for a positive outcome.
He prays that things will truly turn out well for everyone involved.
A sudden, loud clatter sounding as a carriage travels through the bright, sun-drenched scenery. A sudden heavy thud sounding as someone exits the vehicle amidst a field of flowers.
Minervina arrives at her destination, sighing with relief that she finally reached the estate.
A sudden rhythmic thump-thump sounding as she stands before the massive palace gates.
The narrative shifts to several days prior to her arrival.
Minervina reacts with visible shock and confusion to unexpected news.
Elise explains that assets recovered from Magdala's capture require an expert appraisal. The girl asks if the Grand Duke requested her specific assistance for the job. The Guildmaster confirms he intends to oversee the new staff personally.
Minervina feels overwhelmed by the potential headache of this high-pressure assignment.
A close-up highlights the purple-haired girl's growing concern and inner determination.
Elise admits she simply cannot afford to lose such a high-profile client. A chibi version of the girl reluctantly accepts her professional duties as an employee.
A sudden quick glance sounding as Minervina considers the risk of facing the Duke.
A sudden bright sparkle sounding as Elise excitedly plans to network with the Duke.
Minervina wonders why her superior is acting so unprofessionally eager and undignified.
A sudden tired pew sounding as she realizes she has no choice but to go.
The girl laughs softly to herself while preparing for the difficult task ahead.
Minervina follows a silent maid through the grand entrance of the massive estate.
She recalls her colleagues' emotional pleas, but remains focused on returning to her appraisal work.
A sudden quick look sounding as she notices a noisy crowd of mages seeking favors.
A chibi version of the girl freezes in sudden, wide-eyed alarm.
She spots Jahig standing near the entrance while talking to an assistant.
Minervina panics, wondering why the silver-haired man is present so early in the morning.
Jahig remains focused on his documents, seemingly unaware of the growing crowd. A sudden, fast turn sounding as the girl tries to hide her face from view. She hopes her new cloak and the large crowd will protect her secret identity.
The Archduke's sharp gaze cuts directly through the crowd as he looks toward her.
Minervina is horrified to realize that he has already identified her despite her disguise.
A sudden rhythmic pat sounding as Jahig approaches with steady, purposeful steps.
He walks with an air of cold authority that commands the attention of everyone.
A sudden heavy thump sounding as the girl's heart races in mounting fear.
A sudden soft rustle sounding as the Duke looms over her trembling form. Minervina begs silently for him not to recognize her in front of the others. A sudden, frantic thump sounding as she huddles deeply under her purple cloak.
Jahig reaches out his gloved hand toward her while her heart beats wildly. A tanned-haired man suddenly interrupts the moment, greeting the Duke with a friendly smile.
Jahig looks away to acknowledge the newcomer, giving the girl a brief moment to hide.
Minervina remains extremely tense, clutching her hood in a state of high anxiety.
A sudden, steady clop sounding as footsteps move away into the distance. The green-haired attendant leads the way with a polite and formal request.
A sudden low ooh sounding as the girls react to the grand vault with awe. A massive storage room appears filled with countless barrels and glowing magical artifacts.
The guide identifies the items as dangerous treasures belonging to a notorious criminal mage.
Minervina wonders about the vast collection and when the thief managed to steal it all.
A specific item catches the purple-haired girl's sharp and experienced appraisal eyes.
A sudden quick snap sounding as a glowing snowflake-shaped artifact is revealed as a weapon.
The girls discuss what to do with the beautiful but highly dangerous magical gemstone.
Minervina looks on with a nervous and deeply uncertain expression.
The crowd recognizes her as a famous appraiser and begs her for a demonstration.
Her colleagues cheer excitedly while the hooded girl remains extremely tense and reluctant.
Their eyes sparkle with joy at being in the presence of such a renowned expert.
A sudden, tired sigh sounding as Minervina agrees to help while avoiding the spotlight.
A sudden, quick look sounding as she predicts that no dangerous activation will occur.
She feels overwhelmed as several people approach her with various items to identify. A sudden, soft rustle sounding as Jahig prepares to oversee the ongoing work.
The Archduke pauses in a moment of stillness while reviewing his official documents.
Jahig confirms he took special measures to ensure the appraisal process was properly verified.
A sudden, soft ha sounding as he realizes her disguise will not protect her identity.
The silver-haired man watches the scene with a subtle and knowing smile.
A sudden, quiet sniff sounding as he laments her constant attempts to avoid his gaze. The assistant misinterprets the Duke's thoughtful expression as concern over the magical staff's performance. He asks his superior if someone should be sent to check on the progress. Jahig remains confident that the entire matter will be resolved very quickly. A sudden, quick clop sounding as Minervina rushes to finish her task before the Duke arrives.
She receives the final item and investigates its unique and dangerous activation requirements.
A sudden quick snap sounding as a system warning of an imminent explosion appears. The snowflake artifact begins to glow with a terrifying and lethal blue light.
Panic sets in as Minervina realizes the weapon is about to detonate in the room.
She counts the people present and realizes the deadly condition of 30 people has been met. A sudden sharp click sounding as she screams a desperate warning to save everyone.
Jahig reacts with sudden alarm as he senses the massive spike in magical energy.
A sudden fast dash sounding as Minervina lunges forward to grab the freezing artifact.
A sudden sharp crack sounding as ice spreads rapidly over her skin and body. A sudden quick snap sounding as the magical energy reaches a critical and blinding peak.
A sudden heavy bam sounding as the Archduke lunges forward to catch the fallen girl.
A sudden bright flash sounding as the artifact erupts in a surge of power.
A sudden heavy cough sounding as the dust settles and the colleagues wonder what happened.
Jahid calls out to the unconscious girl while holding her securely in his arms.
A sudden faint wobble sounding as Minervina's eyes flutter open at the sound of his voice. The purple-haired girl looks up at the Archduke with a dazed and confused expression. A sudden soft rustle sounding as she leans weakly against him for physical support. Broken fragments of the destroyed weapon are scattered across the floor following the blast.
Jahig asks if she is injured after her dangerous attempt to break the artifact.
Minervina shivers violently while reflecting on her narrow escape from a certain death.
A sudden quiet gasp sounding as the Duke looks at her with intense concern.
He insists on taking her home immediately despite her quiet protests that she is fine.
Jahig sweeps the girl into a firm and protective princess carry without hesitation.
Minervina reacts with visible shock and a deep, embarrassed blush across her face.
A sudden series of clicks sounding as he carries her away, certain of her true identity.
Minervina reflects on being held so closely.
Jahig stares forward in heavy silence.
The girl looks up, dazed and flushed.
She struggles to maintain her composure. A sudden rhythmic clatter sounding as the carriage travels through the city.
Minervina insists that she is perfectly capable of returning home on her own.
The Archduke argues that she was clearly in significant pain earlier.
A sudden sharp jolt sounding as Jahig asks why she previously tried to avoid him.
The silver-haired man teases her by asking if she is merely pretending not to know.
Minervina finds his presence overwhelming, while he notes her surprisingly natural and formal speech.
A sudden quiet fidget sounding as he moves his gloved fingers in thought. A tense silence settles between them. The girl questions why he keeps requesting her presence at his estate. Jahig watches her with intense focus. The Duke remains silent and composed.
Memories of her bravery briefly flicker.
He observes that she has a habit of risking her life to protect others. Minervina wonders what her selfless actions have to do with his request. A sudden soft shrug sounding as he acts sly and asks if she truly doesn't understand. The girl is struck by a sudden realization.
She remains frozen in stunned silence.
Jahig considers her behavior to be an entirely natural part of her character. Minervina quietly acknowledges that his assessment of her is correct.
She thinks about how she is not strong. A sudden firm grip sounding as she clutches the purple brooch at her collar.
She resolves that she would repeat her dangerous actions even if time rewound. A sudden, subtle grin sounding as the Archduke reacts with visible amusement.
The carriage arrives at its destination.
A sudden, light tap sounding as someone steps out onto the pavement. A sudden, quick hop sounding as the girl prepares to exit the vehicle. Jahig offers a polite, charming gesture.
Minervina reacts with confusion and embarrassment.
She takes his hand for support. The Duke promises to send a physician to treat her lingering internal injuries.
Royal medals adorn his formal attire.
She bluntly rejects future meetings while Jahig admits his disappointment at her words.
A sudden, loud clatter sounding as the carriage moves away into the distance.
Minervina stands alone and emphasizes her resolve to keep her distance.
A soft blush appears on her face.
A mage expresses deep appreciation.
Chaotic memories of the explosion return. Minervina tells Elise that her gratitude should be reflected in her performance review. A sudden bright ha-ha sounding as the blonde woman laughs at her request.
A chibi version of the girl finds her superior's attitude entirely typical.
A sudden quiet pop sounding as a man asks if her name is mine.
A sudden fast turn sounding as Minervina looks back in surprise.
A sudden low chuckle sounding as a man with a mustache praises her growing reputation.
A sudden sharp glance sounding as he mentions her connections to the Duke and the Guild.
The dark-haired man mockingly questions the true quality of her appraisal certification.
A sudden soft rustle sounding as he reaches toward the weary gull.
Minervina shakes the man's hand while admitting she lacks an appraisal certification.
Marinus laughs mockingly at her lack of credentials and magical ability.
Colleagues gossip, wondering how she entered the prestigious guild through mere luck.
Minervina sighs, realizing this man is responsible for her current predicament.
A shout suddenly rings out as someone calls for Mr. Marinus to stop.
Elise steps in, demanding to know if he attributes skill to mere luck. Marinus dismissively claims that everyone else shares his low opinion of her. Elise's expression darkens as a sudden, tired ha sounding. Elise points and challenges Marinus to settle the dispute with an appraisal duel.
A chibi Minervina reacts with total confusion to the sudden aggressive challenge.
Marinus laughs and gladly accepts the terms of the appraisal duel.
Minervina tries to interject, feeling the situation is escalating far too fast.
Her plea for a say in the matter goes completely ignored. The scene shifts as preparations for the competitive appraisal begin.
The three stand around a table to begin appraising the first item. Minervina wonders how she got dragged into such a tiresome and unnecessary hassle. Elise officially announces the start of the high-stakes appraisal duel.
Marinus steps forward with his specialized tools, claiming the right to go first.
He moves frantically while examining the item with a variety of magnifying lenses. Minervina watches his performative appraisal process with a flat and unimpressed gaze. A sudden, relieved huff sounding as he finally concludes his thorough inspection.
Marinus confidently identifies the item as holy water crafted by a specific god.
He mocks Minervina's chances, boasting about how quickly he finished the task. Colleagues mock her, claiming this failure is what happens when connections are overused. The blue-haired girl and her friend cheer loudly for Minervina to succeed.
Minervina calmly asks if it is her turn, surprising the arrogant man.
She stands tall and confident as she prepares to begin her turn.
Marinus crosses his arms dismissively, telling her to go ahead and try.
Minervina begins her appraisal by calling for the next item immediately. She identifies a burial relic from a specific tyrant's tomb with perfect accuracy.
She correctly identifies a mask as a fake, shocking the gathered observers.
Minervina warns everyone not to touch the dangerous and cursed Old Realm soil. She identifies an antique vase with a sudden, quick tap sounding. She moves to the next item with effortless speed and total composure.
Marinus is visibly shaken and calls for the next item in a panic. The announcer presents the final item for the appraisal duel.
A bright flash erupts as the chest is opened, startling the man.
He shouts for her to wait as his panic reaches a peak. Marinus screams that she is appraising without tools and suspects a foul trick.
Colleagues note with disbelief that she isn't even using any mana.
Minervina remains entirely unimpressed by their accusations and mounting disbelief.
She contemplates the absurdity of the situation as her skill is proven.
Marinus grumbles about how irritating it is to be outmatched so easily.
Elise smiles, confident that no one will question Minervina's immense skill now.
The blue-haired girl and her friend celebrate Minervina's undeniable victory. They hug her happily, glad that the nerve-wracking ordeal has finally ended. The previously skeptical colleagues are left stunned and completely speechless.
Someone shouts that others must wait in line to speak with her.
Minervina worries as the crowd becomes increasingly noisy and demanding of her attention. Elise looks on with a proud and satisfied expression at the result.
Minervina pauses while deep in thought.
She recalls a past life experience. The girl reflects on her surroundings.
A soft smile appears on her face.
A sudden, bright ha-ha sounding as Minervina laughs joyfully at a joke. A sudden, loud wah sounding as the blonde woman announces everyone can leave work early today while the crowd cheers.
Elise asks Minervina to come with her immediately while the other colleagues watch them with visible concern.
Minervina dreads having to do more work at the Kahashu auction right after completing her exhausting appraisal duel.
The colleagues worry if she will be okay as the purple-haired girl looks back at them with a dazed expression.
Chibi Minervina realizes that Elise Barrett is fired up about the auction, despite her true feelings being entirely different.
She reflects on how she is the only person who can normally see the floating system window.
The friends bid each other farewell and promise to see one another again tomorrow morning. Minervina ponders the power of the system. She admits she would have been terrified like the others if she could not read the interface. The girl feels she has relied on the system window without even realizing her dependence on it. She acknowledges her deep reliance on screens. She begins to cut her meat. Minervina takes a big, tasty bite. She enjoys the delicious meal immensely.
Elise asks if the food is to her liking, while Minervina happily confirms that it is really good.
Chibi versions of the pair eat dinner. A sudden soft wah sounding as a voice asks what she means by that statement.
Elise crosses her arms and claims she knows everything that happened during the day. The blonde woman explains that the competitive appraisal also served as a necessary lesson to Marinus.
A sudden, quiet sounding as Minervina decides to let the matter slide for now while drinking her tea.
Elise asks if she would like to accompany her to the upcoming Kahashu auction held that evening. She points out a grand building visible through the glass window of the restaurant. Minervina realizes the building she thought was a concert hall is actually the auction house where the event is held. Since they have finished eating, they decide to go check out the building together. Elise mentions her plan to put the Colossus Orb up for auction to the highest bidder. Minervina reacts with visible recognition at the name of the legendary artifact.
She recalls appraising the unpleasant item as a test in the past and wonders if someone will actually buy it.
Minervina notes that Elise's eyes always sparkle whenever she is about to ask her for a favor. She thinks about the implications of strengthening Sophus's position in the market.
The girl crosses her arms and bluntly asks exactly how much money she is offering for her help.
A sudden, light ha-ha sounding as a voice notes that she never lets anything slide without a price.
Elise offers 50% of the profit increase from a reappraisal, but Minervina counters by demanding 80%.
Elise protests the high demand and reminds her that they still need to make a profit.
She argues that Sophus will merely sit back and gain significant money and fame from the deal.
Minervina refuses to budge on her cut and insists that expenses would have been there regardless of her involvement. A sudden, sharp gleam appears in her eye. A sudden, bright ha-ha sounding as Minervina laughs and promises to help her seriously after finishing their negotiation.
Elise calls out her name in frustration.
Jahig reads a formal document inside a moving carriage while a wheel turns in the background.
Levi mentions that he hears a dangerous item is coming up for auction and must not fall into other hands.
The Duke notes that Sophus is selling the item and reflects on the suspicious nature of the woman involved.
Jahig tells Levi to watch his words while the dark-haired man offers a quick and sincere apology.
A sudden, sharp glance sounding as he stares. He recalls a memory of the girl.
Jahig remains lost in quiet contemplation.
Jahig wonders if a certain situation is possible while Levi reacts with confusion.
The scene transitions to the girls walking happily together through a path filled with flowers. Jahig remains lost in quiet contemplation as he travels within the carriage. A sudden, bright ha-ha sounding as Jahig laughs, prompting Levi to ask for the reason behind his amusement.
Jahig dismisses the concern and admits he is simply looking forward to the upcoming auction.
A collective murmur fills the grand auction hall as a massive crowd gathers for the event.
Minervina and Elise arrive at the venue wearing hooded cloaks to keep their identities discreet.
A system notification highlights that Elise Barrett is currently feeling extremely excited.
Minervina watches her companion and thinks that the woman is a master of the poker face. An approaching man addresses the pair as they enter the building.
A voice calls out to identify the blonde woman as Miss Barrett from the Sophus Guild.
Marinus appears with an arrogant smirk and a confident posture.
The girls struggle to hide their blatant dislike as Minervina wonders where Elise's composure went.
A sudden, tired ha sounding as Elise bluntly asks if he needs something from her.
A sudden, light ha-ha sounding as Marinus denies needing anything in particular. Minervina suspects he is an embezzler, but a system window reveals that he surprisingly is not.
A sudden, quiet sounding as the girl realizes the system is now reading her internal thoughts. She narrows her eyes while pondering the reputation of the Ulysses Guild.
The system describes Ulysses as a powerful guild that once performed questionable dirty work.
A sudden, soft sounding as Marinus notes that Sophus has submitted several items for the auction.
He reacts with a mockingly dismissive gesture toward the blonde woman.
Marinus confidently tells her that the results of the event will be revealed soon enough.
A system notification recalls a past failure where Elise accidentally purchased a fake item. Marinus offers a mock bow while claiming his only intention was to offer a compliment. He suggests that the only reason Sophus is still standing is due to her individual skills. A sudden fast turn sounding as he arrogantly offers to let her work under his command.
Marinus laughs loudly while the girls react with visible and audible frustration.
A sudden tired ha sounding as Elise apologizes to Minervina for her unprofessional display of emotion. Minervina reassures her friend that such reactions are perfectly understandable given the circumstances.
Elise reflects on the man's past, noting that he was not always so insufferably rude.
Marinus calls for a drink while being attended to by a member of the auction staff. The two girls stand together as they prepare for the start of the official proceedings.
Elise describes their guild leader as a powerful and impressive mage who is currently traveling.
A sudden sharp shout sounding as the start of the auction is officially announced. An attendant requests that all the gathered guests take their seats to begin the bidding.
Elise and Minervina agreed to move forward and enter the main auction hall.
Minervina looks forward with a determined smile and promises to show everyone an entertaining scene. A sudden, loud ooh sounding as a chibi Elise becomes overwhelmed with anticipation. The first item, a decorative egg called Lily of the Battlefield, is presented to the audience. Minervina observes the display and notes that the item was successfully put up for bid. She is shocked to hear the initial bid for the item reach 150.
The bidding war escalates rapidly from 155,000 to 200,000 gold.
A sudden low wah sounding as Minervina feels physically ill with envy over the massive sums of money. A sudden sharp T-top sounding as the gavel falls on the final bid of 200,000 gold. An announcer prepares to unveil the next valuable item for the eager crowd.
A painting titled Green Death is shown, with a system note predicting its value will soon skyrocket.
A sudden quiet gasp sounding as Minervina questions the claim about the artist's supposed fate. The purple-haired girl raises her paddle, ready to enter the high-stakes bidding war.
Elise looks toward her companion with a curious and expectant expression.
Marinus sits confidently in the audience as the announcer moves the auction to the next item.
The auctioneer enthusiastically introduces the highly anticipated orb of the Wraith King to the gathered crowd.
Bidding for the legendary item starts at a staggering 200,000 gold.
The price quickly rises to 210,000 gold while Elise laughs with delight at the successful auction. Minervina observes her companion and feels that the woman is perhaps a bit too excited about the high bids.
As the bidding war continues to 220,000 gold, Minervina begins to feel a sense of unease. A system window warns that the orb is cursed with plague and madness, capable of bringing ruin to the entire world. When the bid hits 240,000 gold, Minervina realizes she must intervene to prevent a potential catastrophe. The girl turns away and moves through the crowd with a look of frantic determination. A mysterious man in a dark cloak raises his paddle, identified by the system as Grand Duke Jahig Riddim Exarch Ferrado Schroeder. The auctioneer scans the room for any additional offers before closing the sale.
A sudden, sharp T-tap sounding as the gavel falls, officially selling the cursed artifact for 240,000 gold.
Jahig stands and immediately makes his way out of the auction hall with a purposeful stride.
Elise watches with confusion as she realizes that the high-profile buyer is leaving so soon.
Minervina quickly tells her friend that she is heading out early, leaving the blonde woman completely shocked.
The purple-haired girl looks back with a sharp gaze, determined to fulfill her self-appointed duty. A system notification reveals that a sketch titled Playing Angels by Angela Moss hides a masterpiece of immense value beneath it.
Elise looks at her with wide eyes and asks if she truly understands the nature of the item she is pursuing.
Minervina sprints down the hallway while a frustrated Elise calls out her name from behind. The girl bursts through a pair of large doors and searches the area for any sign of her target. A series of glowing blue arrows appears on a system window to guide her through the maze-like building.
Minervina follows the directions and thinks to herself that the system is being surprisingly helpful for once.
She eventually catches up to Jahig in a secluded alleyway outside the main hall.
A sudden, sharp quack sounding as the white-haired man thrusts a sword directly through the center of the cursed orb.
Jahig stands over the shattered remains of the artifact, having completely neutralized its dangerous power.
He looks down with a calm expression as the dark energy dissipates from the broken pieces.
The system confirms that the item has been rendered powerless after being pierced by a person blessed by the goddess.
Jahig calmly sheathes his weapon and prepares to move on from the scene.
Minervina peeks around a stone pillar and is caught by the man's observant gaze.
She flinches as their eyes meet, her face flushed with a mix of surprise and embarrassment.
Jahig reaches out toward her with a gentle gesture. He wears a warm smile and asks the girl if she came all this way specifically to find him. A playful scene shows a chibi Jaheg with animal ears looking expectantly at the nervous girl.
Minervina laughs nervously and admits that seeing him was indeed her primary intention.
Jahig explains that he followed her out of concern after hearing rumors of the Emperor's harassment.
The two stand together as the broken pieces of the orb lie forgotten on the ground behind them.
A system window reappears to list his full titles and notes that his fatigue level is currently at 9%.
Minervina expresses her amazement that he would spend such a massive fortune just to destroy the dangerous item.
Chibi Minervina reacts with shock at the revelation that he paid 2.4 million gold for the artifact.
Jahig laughs and admits he finds it refreshing that someone other than his own butler is worried about his spending.
He looks away and dismissively states that solving problems with money is usually the easiest path to take. Minervina watches him and thinks that a man with his mindset and resources should be leading the country's politics. A sudden thought occurs to her and she looks at the man with a new sense of wonder. She gazes up at him with sparkling eyes while Jahig reacts with visible confusion at her sudden change in mood. The man looks down with a soft, thoughtful expression as he regards the young girl. Jahig places a gloved hand on her head while Minervina blinks in surprise at the affectionate contact.
He leans in close and reassures her that he is perfectly fine just the way things are.
Minervina stares up at him with wide pink eyes, her heart pounding in her chest. A sudden soft talk sounding as Jahig continues his head pat while the girl mentions she has a lot to share with him.
Elise finally finds them and wonders aloud where Minervina could have disappeared to.
Minervina waves happily as she stands beside her friend while Jahig watches them with a quiet smile.
Jahig offers a formal and respectful greeting while Minervina realizes her superior has come to find her.
A sudden soft talk sounding as a gloved hand rhythmically taps against the fabric of a dark cloak.
Minervina frantically pulls Elise away from the nobleman, who watches their sudden departure with confusion.
The purple-haired girl laughs cheerfully while guiding her friend away, leaving Jahig to stand alone in thought. A gloved hand reaches out to catch the attention of the white-haired man.
Levi asks his master for instructions on what should be done with the shattered fragments of the cursed orb.
Jahig turns his head away and calmly calls out the name of his loyal subordinate.
As they walk through the town, Elise asks about the meeting, but Minervina dismisses it as nothing special.
Jahig ponders internally whether his behavior was inadvertently frightening to the young woman he just met.
Levy reassures him of his gentlemanly conduct and suggests that the girl was actually the one being rude.
The nobleman clutches his chest and wonders why he feels like Minervina is actively trying to avoid him.
A sudden, sharp cuck sounding as the man grips his cloak while lost in a moment of deep frustration. Minervina looks back and resolves that she will not allow him to escape her notice so easily in the future.
The girl sits alone, her expression shifting between curiosity and a sense of mounting determination.
She reflects on her hasty retreat and begins to wonder if she misinterpreted the man's vulnerable expression.
Minervina realizes that the look on Jahig's face reminded her of her own struggles in a former life.
A memory reveals her past self working late into the night, carrying every burden alone without expectation of reward. Elise enters the room to check on her friend, startling the purple-haired girl out of her deep introspection.
A playful exchange occurs between the two companions as they greet each other with lighthearted laughter.
Elise smilingly invites Minervina to accompany her to the warehouse to inspect some new items together.
They enter a room filled with crates, and Elise notes the significant increase in the amount of inventory.
Minervina looks around frantically while her friend watches her erratic search with a confused expression.
The girl stops her search suddenly as she spots a specific item hidden in the corner of the warehouse.
She points toward a large canvas and triumphantly announces that she has found what she was looking for.
Elise questions if the item is truly valuable, expressing skepticism about its worth to the guild.
The blonde woman notes that simple sketches usually do not fetch a high price during official auctions.
A sudden, light sick sounding as Minervina smiles, implying that the object is far more than a simple sketch. The girl stands confidently as she prepares to reveal the secret hidden within the seemingly ordinary artwork. Minervina reassures her companion and insists that they proceed with her plan without any further delay.
Chibi Elise reluctantly agrees to help, though she remains skeptical of her friend's unusual confidence.
A sudden rhythmic sagak sounding as a sharp blade begins to carefully slice through the top layer of canvas.
Staff members work under the girl's supervision to delicately remove the outer layer of the painting.
An attendant mentions that they are simply following instructions as they continue their mysterious task.
The worker suddenly gasps in shock as he catches a glimpse of something hidden beneath the original sketch.
A loud exclamation fills the room as the staff discovers a hidden masterpiece concealed within the frame.
The workers confirm that an entirely different and highly valuable painting was hidden beneath the top layer.
Elise is left speechless by the discovery, while Minervina celebrates the success of her insightful plan.
A sudden, loud ooh sounding as the onlookers marvel at the incredible artistry of the hidden work.
The hidden masterpiece is fully unveiled, revealing a divine and complex design that radiates a powerful energy.
Chibi Elise becomes overwhelmed with joy, realizing that they have truly hit the ultimate jackpot.
A sudden, bustling chirp sounding as the scene shifts to the bright and peaceful streets of the city.
Minervina walks through town, enjoying an unexpected reward vacation during her leisure time.
A sudden, soft sisk sounding as she smiles to herself, feeling satisfied with her recent accomplishments.
The girl gleefully imagines coins falling from the sky, while a passerby wonders if she is a strange person.
She calculates her share of the profits, recalling the lucrative commission agreement she made for the auction.
Symbols of pure gold appear in Minervina's eyes as she basks in the glow of her newfound wealth.
Elise offers her a lifetime contract after sending an advance payment of 700,000 gold.
A sudden, loud yahoo sounding as the girl cheers for being rich while the world around her seems beautiful.
A sudden light sick sounding as Minervina looks toward the future with a confident and satisfied smirk.
The scene zooms out to show the peaceful city rooftops as a new chapter of her life begins.
Minervina walks through the quiet, snowy streets of the city.
She pauses for a moment, looking thoughtful as she considers her next move.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, sharp T-tuck sounding as she snaps her fingers in realization.
The girl glances around cautiously, her pink eyes scanning the area for any observers.
She turns and begins to walk with renewed purpose down the cobblestone path.
Minervina lets out a light-hearted laugh, feeling confident about the plan she has formulated.
As she walks, the gray-haired man on the street asks his companion what news he has heard.
The man with the mustache reacts with shock, asking why such a thing has happened.
The gray-haired man explains that rumors say the emperor collapsed and was taken to the temple.
The man with the mustache worries that the situation must be grave if even doctors cannot help.
Both men express deep concern over what will happen to the country after a sudden, heavy sigh sounding from the girl.
Minervina realizes the news sounds like the opening of the story she once read.
She recalls how a great catastrophe began in the saga immediately after the emperor's collapse.
The memory reveals a world where plants withered and monsters began to thrive.
The girl reflects on the grim setting of the world she now inhabits.
Her vision is suddenly interrupted by a bright flash of blue light.
A complex system interface appears before her eyes, manifesting in mid-air.
Minervina wonders if she's being forced into a new quest by the system.
She looks around in shock as multiple glowing windows surround her.
The girl questions the madness of the situation as the windows demand her attention.
The system lists options to frame a princess or gain the emperor's trust, both with no penalties for failure.
Chibi Minervina feels the system is practically begging her to take on one of the tasks.
She clutches her head and laments that the situation is driving her crazy.
The girl realizes that she has no choice but to accept one of the presented quests.
Chibi Minervina imagines herself as a cackling witch spreading plague, but immediately rejects the idea.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft tutok sounding as she taps a specific quest window. She considers the task of framing Princess Batilda for the Emperor's mysterious illness.
Chibi Minervina quickly dismisses that option, thinking it would be impossible for a ruined noble like her.
She imagines a more favorable scenario where she wins over the Emperor with her helpfulness. The girl's eyes sparkle as she decides on the path that leads to the palace.
She hums to herself while weighing the risks of her chosen mission.
A distressed Chibi Minervina wonders if the Emperor would even consider meeting someone of her status. She suddenly freezes as she reaches the outer perimeter of her destination.
The girl arrives before the massive, ornate gates of the Grand Palace.
Minervina smiles brightly while holding a small, valuable ornament in her hand.
The palace guard looks at her with a mix of surprise and confusion.
The man urges her to wait a moment before he turns and runs toward the inner courtyard.
Minervina watches him go, feeling a bit nervous about the reception she might receive.
Chibi Minervina recalls a cheerful goodbye with a white-haired boy while resolving to avoid him in the future.
Chibi Minervina wears a sweet smile and asks if someone was looking for her.
A system window identifies a teal-haired man as Dominic Keto, a wary knight who could be useful.
A lush, flowering plant sits in a sunny hallway, reflecting the opulence of the building.
Minervina walks through the fancy hallway and notes the incredible value of the statues on display.
She stops to examine a white stone statue that catches her eye. A system notification reveals that the winged lion statue hides a secret maze used for prisoners.
The girl continues her walk, thinking that the palace is filled with many strange artifacts.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, rhythmic tugok sounding as a pair of red heels approaches. A voice mentions having heard that the purple-haired girl has recently joined the Sophist Guild.
Princess Batilda, with long white hair and red eyes, greets her guest with a confident smirk.
Minervina stands her ground and politely states that she has come specifically to see the princess.
Minervina bows politely before Princess Batilda as Dominic suggests they skip the unnecessary formalities.
Princess Batilda offers a knowing smirk while observing the girl with intense red eyes. A lone teacup sits on the table as a foreboding thought warns that nothing good will come of this meeting. Princess Batilda leans forward and asks what urgent matter has brought such an unexpected guest to her chambers.
A sudden soft sick sounding as Minervina hesitates, her expression clouded with uncertainty as she prepares to respond.
The white-haired princess watches intently while the girl struggles to find the right words to explain her presence.
A sudden sharp cuck sounding as Minervina tightly grips her skirt, feeling the weight of the princess's gaze.
The girl looks up with newfound determination, ready to reveal the true purpose behind her visit to the palace. Batilda maintains a cool and collected demeanor, her sharp features highlighted by a glimmer of amusement. A sudden, sharp sisk sounding as the princess smiles deviously, appearing to find the situation quite entertaining. A sudden, light dalgak sounding as Batilda holds her teacup and admits she has no particular feelings for the Emperor. She takes a slow sip of her tea and calmly adds that her lack of emotion is simply the truth. Minervina is left wondering about the hidden meaning behind the princess's cold and detached words.
The girl reflects on Princess Batilda's name while a dark, swirling energy reflects the gravity of the situation.
Batilda notes the bitterness of the tea, while Minervina questions if the princess truly intends to let the emperor suffer.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, sharp whiltic sounding as she considers the possibility of a darker motive.
Dominic stands nearby like a silent sentinel, his hand resting warily on the hilt of his sword.
A sudden, heavy kung sounding as the knight's hand shifts on his weapon, emphasizing the tension in the room. A sudden, soft umjil sounding as Minervina flinches while Dominic claims he has no intention of harming a potential healer.
A thought bubble reveals a desire to remain neutral and avoid getting entangled in the complex power struggles.
A sudden, light dalgak sounding as the princess sets her cup down and firmly concludes the brief conversation.
Dominic closes his eyes and gives a curt nod, signaling that the audience has come to an end.
Minervina pulls her hood back over her head, her face set in a look of deep, quiet contemplation.
The teal-haired knight leads the way toward the exit while the purple-haired girl follows closely behind. Dominic guides her out of the room as Batilda reaches for a snack, with a sudden, soft jujubuk sounding from their footsteps.
Batilda eats a piece of chocolate and muses about the Sage of Rector appearing at such a pivotal moment.
A sudden, soft umul sounding as the princess chews thoughtfully, already calculating her next strategic move. A vision of the emperor on a dark throne appears as the princess recalls her father's ascension to power. A sudden, sharp quack sounding as Batilda clenches her fist, vowing to find the strength needed to overturn the hierarchy. She imagines the sage supporting her cause, believing that such an alliance would provide a massive advantage.
Princess Batilda looks toward the side with a determined gaze, resolving to bring the mysterious girl under her influence.
The scene shifts to the quiet city as a thought bubble asks why a certain person is not the crown princess. Lyra and her companions sit at a table, with the blue-haired girl beginning to explain the complex royal lineage.
Minervina looks startled while her blonde friend asks if something is wrong with her sudden reaction.
The blonde woman continues to eat her meal, seemingly unaware of the girl's mounting internal turmoil.
A thought bubble expresses confusion over whether the situation is truly as strange as it seems. A sudden loud wang sounding as Lyra takes a large bite of her sandwich while they discuss the royal family. Lyra asks for more food as Minervina realizes her friends are trying to make excuses to protect her.
The purple-haired girl smiles warmly at her companions, feeling a deep sense of gratitude for their kindness.
The blonde woman leans on the table and asks if Minervina is familiar with the details of the Emperor's rise.
Lyra explains that the reason Princess Batilda lacks her desired title is actually quite straightforward. A sudden, sharp chiok sounding as Lyra holds up 2 fingers and notes that Batilda is merely the second child.
Minervina reacts with visible surprise, realizing she may have misunderstood the princess's true standing.
Chibi Minervina curiously asks if there is someone of higher rank currently standing above the princess.
Chibi Lyra confirms with a cheerful expression that the first in line is Crown Prince Felix.
A sudden, soft soughing sounding as they discuss the prince's poor reputation and rumors of his violent nature.
Minervina repeats the description of the prince while her blonde friend lets out a sudden, heavy, ehu sounding sigh.
A sudden, soft hio sounding as the girl finally connects the rumors to the story she remembers reading.
A mystical vision shows the emperor's image reflected onto his son, revealing a dark and troubling legacy. Minervina looks forward with a serious expression, acknowledging that the system quest regarding Batilda has officially begun.
A dark vision depicts Batilda standing over the fallen emperor as blood-red shadows loom.
A floating text bubble clarifies that this was the original story's tragic conclusion. Minervina clutches her head, lamenting the cruel path the narrative was intended to follow. A system notification appears, offering a main quest to frame Batilda for the emperor's illness. Her attention is taken by a sudden, sharp cook sounding as Minervina presses the accept button.
The girl's expression hardens with determination as she realizes she needs a reliable ally.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, heavy doo-dong sounding as a gray-haired knight demands her purpose.
Minervina looks up with wide, startled eyes as she is caught off guard by the man's presence.
Chibi Minervina panics internally while wondering how to properly identify herself to the palace staff. Her attention is taken by a sudden, sharp wheeltick sounding as the knight salutes and asks her to wait. Her attention is taken by a sudden, loud judgerong sounding as the man announces Minervina's arrival. Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft hyuk sounding as a butler runs forward to greet her.
The palace staff offer a warm and enthusiastic welcome to their long-awaited guest.
An array of high-quality tea and delicate refreshments are set out for the girl's enjoyment. Her attention is taken by a sudden, heavy ha sounding as Minervina feels exhausted before even beginning. She wonders if Exarch prepared everyone for her visit, given this surprisingly kind treatment she is receiving. Minervina finds the opulent displays so overwhelming that she cannot even bring herself to eat. Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick whick sounding as she turns toward an approaching presence. Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft jobyak sounding as a white-haired man welcomes her warmly. Her attention is taken by a sudden, sharp beeltuck sounding as Minervina stands to greet the Grand Duke. Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft souk sounding as Felix reaches out to take her hand. The girl hesitates for a brief moment before slowly extending her hand toward the charming nobleman. Their hands meet in a gentle clasp, signaling the start of a formal and mysterious encounter. Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft jock sounding as Felix leans down to kiss her hand. The Grand Duke offers a dazzling smile while standing amidst a backdrop of blooming flowers. Minervina is left frozen in shock as she struggles to process the man's surprisingly bold gesture. The girl manages to speak and explains that she has urgent business with the Grand Duke. Felix maintains a firm yet gentle grip on her hand while listening intently to her request. The white-haired man looks at her with a knowing expression and calls her by the name Exa. Minervina reacts with pure confusion as she wonders why he is using such a familiar nickname. Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick whick sounding as Chigi Felix calls her reaction quite childish.
Her attention is taken by a sudden soft ha sounding as Minervina prepares to ask him a serious question.
Felix turns his head slightly to the side, maintaining his composed and regal demeanor.
Chibi Minervina looks bewildered while repeating his question about her having something to ask.
The man suggests they take turns answering each other's questions over their afternoon tea.
The two of them sit across from each other at a lavishly set table in the bright hall.
Felix takes a small bite of a cookie while observing the girl with a playful glimmer.
Time passes quietly as they sit amidst the glittering refreshments and the soft light of the room.
Minervina reflects on the Emperor's sensitive nature and resolves to find a suitable backup plan. Minervina asks if he would be willing to frame Batilda for plotting against the Emperor.
Felix looks at her with a calm expression and asks why she would need to do something like that.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft su-uk sounding as Minervina explains her reputation is at stake.
The Grand Duke holds up a small gingerbread cookie while considering her bold and unexpected proposal.
The purple-haired girl wonders if blackmailing the princess would actually be a more effective strategy.
Felix notes with a light-hearted tone that the cookie he is holding looks just like Batilda.
Minervina lets out a quiet sigh as she realizes a useless weakness provides no advantage at all.
The girl leans forward and decides it is finally time to tell him the entire truth.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft pongdang sounding as Minervina drops sugar cubes into her tea.
The white-haired man stares in wide-eyed surprise as he reacts to the girl's sudden and blunt confession. Felix looks bewildered while Minervina explains that her ability is limited to identifying the disease rather than curing it.
The white-haired man massages his temple and advises the girl to use more formal language when referring to the Emperor.
Her attention is taken by a sudden quick whick sounding as Felix notes she still hasn't explained the plan to frame the princess.
The nobleman maintains a calm gaze while pointing out that several crucial details of her proposal remain a mystery.
Minervina realizes it is impossible to deceive the sharp-witted man and resolves to cooperate with him for the time being.
Felix uses a small spoon to stir his tea while asking the girl to proceed with her intended question.
Her attention is taken by a sudden sharp talk sounding as Minervina leans forward and asks what he truly sees in her.
The man rests his chin on his gloved hand while carefully considering the girl's bold and direct inquiry.
A close-up reveals the man's sharp, calculating eyes as he silently evaluates the purple-haired girl sitting across from him.
A mystical image of the sage appears behind Minervina as she considers her role in the unfolding political drama.
The girl takes a slow sip of her tea while acknowledging that the truth of her situation is likely quite obvious. Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft dalgok sounding as she notes her formal obligations to the royal family have concluded.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft siwak sounding as the girl adjusts her posture while speaking about her future intentions.
Minervina offers a playful smile while asking if her appearance suggests someone capable of plunging the world into chaos.
Felix remains seated in a relaxed yet regal pose while listening to the girl's philosophical musings about her own nature.
The man's expression turns grave as he prepares to deliver a conditional and very serious warning.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, sharp quack sounding as Felix's gloved hand tightens its grip around a table knife.
The white-haired man points the blade toward the girl and admits he would be forced to eliminate her if she weren't the sage.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft su-uk sounding as the man's posture relaxes and he expresses confidence in her cooperation.
Minervina lets out a nervous laugh while noting that his way of delivering a death threat is surprisingly cheerful.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft swick sounding as the girl asks for her identity to remain hidden from the court.
The man releases his grip on the weapon, signaling that the brief moment of tension has passed for now.
Felix leans back and wonders if he should truly allow himself to be persuaded by her to betray his own relative. Chibi Minervina looks completely drained of energy as she struggles to keep up with the man's intense personality. The scene shifts to the stables 1 week later as several workers busy themselves with their daily chores.
One of the stable hands looks around in confusion and asks about the current location of his assigned horse.
Princess Batilda arrives at the stables with a frustrated expression, her hand resting irritably on her forehead.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick whick sounding as she explains her sudden appearance was due to feeling trapped indoors.
The white-haired princess dismisses the concerns of the staff and tells them to focus on their own responsibilities.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft miyamchit sounding as a worker stops to whisper about a troubling rumor.
The stable hands gossip about the Emperor's sudden collapse and the suspicious whispers surrounding the princess's potential involvement.
A shadowy memory depicts a hooded woman visiting a mysterious doctor, fueling the growing scandals within the palace.
One man finds the accusations difficult to believe, while the other notes that her ambition for the throne is common knowledge.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, sharp quack sounding as the princess's hand clenches around a leather strap in fury. Batilda's eyes glow with red light as she seethes over being surrounded by people who believe such baseless nonsense.
The princess reaches out to pet a horse while trying to suppress the mounting anger she feels toward the court.
She offers a rare, gentle expression as she interacts with the animal, finding a brief moment of peace amidst the chaos.
Batilda turns away with a cold smirk and reflects that only foolish people would be swayed by such ridiculous stories.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft jobiok sounding as a soldier approaches the princess with an urgent message.
The guard reports that the emperor has officially requested her presence, and Batilda's expression immediately hardens with focus. The princess considers the people around her to be utter fools as blood-red shadows loom over her determined face.
The golden light of the setting sun bathes the palace spires in a warm yet somber glow as evening approaches.
Her attention is taken by a sudden soft kukubuk sounding as Batilda bows deeply to greet the ailing emperor.
The emperor lies frail and pale in his massive bed, his eyes wide with the exhaustion of a lingering sickness. Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft heok sounding as the old man weakly commands Batilda to approach him.
The princess maintains a composed and respectful demeanor while acknowledging the command from her dying father.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft jobuk sounding as she walks forward, feeling entirely unsurprised by the news of his collapse. Batilda looks down with a cold and judgmental gaze, believing that her father's current state is entirely his own fault.
A dark vision shows the emperor wasting his time on alcohol and debauchery instead of tending to the needs of the empire. The princess watches the sunset through a window and admits she has been mentally preparing for this moment for a long time.
Batilda looks down at her ailing father, coldly anticipating his death.
The princess's hand trembles slightly as she stands over the dying emperor.
The emperor weakly asks Batilda about her recent suspicious activities.
Batilda maintains a stony silence while staring at the frail man. She claims she is merely ensuring public order while the emperor remains unconvinced. The sick man angrily dismisses her excuses and insists Felix can handle matters.
He commands her to stop meddling and support her older brother instead.
Batilda grit her teeth while coldly promising to obey his restrictive orders.
The emperor orders her to remain confined within the palace walls. He specifically warns her to stay away from the Yusong district.
The princess seethes with suppressed rage as she listens to his final commands.
She turns away, leaving the room with a heart full of resentment. Back in her office, Batilda works at her desk under the watchful eye of an aide. She continues her work, reflecting that her father is still unfortunately alive.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft olkiok sounding as she feels a pang of irritation. The princess questions whether someone as weak as Felix deserves the throne.
Batilda clenches her pen while comparing Felix's incompetence to Exarch's competitive nature.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, sharp dudok sounding as the golden pen snaps under her grip.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft tuck sounding as the broken fragments fall onto the desk.
She tosses the ruins aside and decides to prepare for an inevitable armed struggle.
The princess's red eyes glowed with a cold and calculating intensity. Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft kubuk sounding as a maid announces Minervina's arrival.
Batilda orders the girl to enter, viewing the sage as a necessary weapon for war.
Minervina enters the room with a graceful and composed air.
The purple-haired girl is determined to win the favor of the dangerous princess. Batilda greets her guest with a superficial and charming smile.
Minervina offers a formal greeting while feeling the tension in the room.
Numerous holographic reports flash before her eyes, detailing complex military and financial data.
Her attention is taken by a sudden quick sounding as Minervina feels overwhelmed by the influx of information.
A secret report reveals political collusion involving the royal family.
More data regarding memorials and dam construction materializes in front of her.
Batilda notices the girl's distress and asks if she's feeling all right.
Minervina dismisses her concern, claiming she only has a mild headache.
The princess warns her that collapsing in the palace would be highly inconvenient. Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft seek sounding as Batilda smiles darkly about the busy medical staff. The girl realizes that leaving the princess unchecked will lead to total war. Batilda nonchalantly flips through her papers while ignoring the looming political crisis. Minervina remains steadfast and repeats her previous request for an audience. She pleads for the princess to allow her to see the ailing emperor.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft miomchit sounding as Batilda's hand freezes midair.
The princess looks at her with utter contempt as her trust in Minervina plummets. Minervina brings up the scandalous rumors that are currently damaging the royal reputation.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, sharp quang sounding as Batilda slams the table in a fit of rage.
The girl stands her ground and urges the princess to walk a more righteous path.
Minervina insists that the princess must not let her future be stained by filth.
Batilda lets out a chilling laugh while repeating the word filth with mockery. Her attention is taken by a sudden, sharp cheok sounding as the princess points a finger at the girl. A red system warning appears, threatening to activate a safety algorithm for Minervina.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft su-uk sounding as Minervina manages to suppress the system and play her part. The encounter concludes with a stark reminder of the sage's profound influence.
Minervina clasps her hands together and looks upward with a pleading, prayer-like expression.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft miamchit sounding as Batilda freezes in shock at the girl's sudden proposal.
Minervina promises to find the truth behind the Emperor's illness and give all the credit for the discovery to the princess. The aide mentions the rumors from the streets and asks if she knows what most people are saying after hearing them.
A report states that the public believes their princess would never do such a scandalous thing.
A scene shows commoners gathered in a village square discussing the latest news and rumors surrounding the palace.
The aide continues his report to the princess, preparing to deliver his final observation on the matter.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft kubuk sounding as Minervina bows deeply and asks to be used for the princess's goals.
Batilda lets out a long sigh while sitting back and admitting she finally understands the girl's intent.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, sharp cheok sounding as the princess accuses her of conspiring with Exarch to slander her.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft saw sounding as Minervina looks visibly shaken by the cold and direct accusation.
Batilda repeats her question, asking if the girl truly joined hands with Felix just to frame her with insolent words.
Minervina remains silent and nervous, feeling the weight of the princess's intense and judgmental scrutiny.
The girl forces a bright but strained smile while trying to maintain her composure under the mounting pressure.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft pissik sounding as Batilda laughs and notes she would have punished her long ago if she intended to.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft tuck sounding as the princess's hand rests casually on her desk while she speaks.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft koltuk sounding as Minervina swallows hard and realizes the true extent of the princess's influence.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft teal sock sounding as the princess wonders aloud about the connection between Exarch and the sage.
Batilda leans on her desk and asks how the two of them ever came to know each other in the first place.
Minervina hesitates for a moment before preparing to explain the circumstances of their previous meeting.
The princess recalls that the girl assisted in capturing the wanted criminal known as Magdala.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft giole sounding as Minervina shakes her head and clarifies that is not what happened.
A speech bubble appears as the girl states she has no intention of getting involved in the imperial family's political struggles.
Her attention is taken by a sudden soft swick sounding as she explains that is why she revealed her identity to Her Highness today.
The aide notes that Batilda is not the crown princess, adding another layer of complexity to the girl's reasoning.
A vision shows Minervina and the Emperor as she explains that being in imperial custody would force her to serve him or the prince.
She points out that such a result would be entirely contrary to Batilda's personal desires and ambitions.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft miamchit sounding as the princess stops to process the girl's clever and logical reasoning.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft pusik sounding as Batilda lets out a small, amused laugh at the girl's audacity.
A loud burst of laughter fills the room as the princess finally finds the entire situation deeply entertaining.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick tat sounding as the princess stands up and prepares to leave her desk.
Batilda brushes her hair back and tells Minervina that she is dreaming of something completely impossible.
The princess offers a faint smile while noting that her stubborn nature resembles a certain person she knows.
A system notification appears, showing that Batilda's trust in Minervina has reached a level of 31%. Minervina looks up in confusion, wondering why the trust level has fluctuated so strangely during their conversation.
Batilda remarks that no one can rival the girl's ability to talk her way through such a tense crisis.
Her attention is taken by a sudden quick whick sounding as the princess officially grants her permission to meet the Emperor.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft sick sounding as Batilda offers a dark and satisfied smirk.
Minervina looks at her in disbelief and asks herself if this moment truly counts as a success.
The girl feels a surge of relief as the immediate tension of the encounter finally begins to fade.
The scene shifts to the massive doors leading to the area where nobles deliver their formal greetings.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick whick sounding as Batilda asks her disguised companion if she is ready for the meeting.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft quang sounding as an exhausted-looking maid in a black mask answers weakly.
The princess wonders why she seems so miserable when this is the audience with the Emperor she had been longing for. Batilda reminds her that acting as a handmaiden was the only way to facilitate their entrance into the room. The girl in the maid uniform forces a laugh and claims she is deeply grateful for the help. Chibi flashbacks show her suffering through a daytime job at Sophis and evening etiquette lessons that feel like a past life. Her attention is taken by a sudden, sharp quack sounding as the girl clenches her fist and tries to remain positive about her training. Minervina stands in her full disguise, prepared to enter the chambers with a nervous but focused gaze. The aide reaches for the door handle and announces that he is about to open the way. Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick squeak sounding as the heavy double doors finally swing open.
A formal announcer presents Princess Bathilda Roick Schroeder to the gathered assembly.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft jobiok sounding as the princess and her disguised maid proceed into the hall. Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft jobiok sounding as the purple-haired girl reflects on the importance of today's visit. Identification windows appear for Marquis Juharini and Marquise Real as they offer their respectful greetings. The girl wonders if the crown prince has failed to show up for such a critical event. She notes that everyone else seems to take the prince's absence as a foregone conclusion. The palace aide directs them to wait inside while the princess signals her agreement.
The girl is suddenly startled by a frantic exclamation directed toward her highness.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick hyodung sounding as a blonde attendant rushes in with news of a crisis.
Batilda demands an explanation for his panicked behavior and the urgency of his arrival.
The attendant breathlessly reports that the emperor's physical condition is rapidly deteriorating.
The news leaves Batilda and her companions visibly stunned by the gravity of the situation.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft saik sounding as the emperor struggles to draw breath in his bed. Healers desperately attempt to stabilize his rising temperature with an infusion of divine power.
A healer laments the chancellor's absence just as the princess bursts into the medical chamber.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft jobiok sounding as Batilda demands a swift and clear explanation. The medical staff is taken aback by the princess's sudden and forceful entrance into the room. Batilda asks when the high priest is expected to return to assist with the treatment.
The girl in the maid uniform calls for a system window to analyze the unfolding disaster.
The system identifies Emperor Anton Tarnak Schroeder and highlights his deep-seated feelings of inferiority.
A medical report details his struggle with a severe and highly complex autoimmune disease.
The girl begins to ponder the possible medical treatments available for such a condition.
She remains focused and intense while processing the data provided by the glowing interface.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, sharp Jake-cock sounding as a 5-minute death timer appears. The system notes that allowing the emperor to die would accelerate the total collapse of the kingdom.
Swirling magical energy fills the frame as the medical crisis reaches a fever pitch.
The system reiterates the question of whether she will permit the emperor's life to end.
The girl is haunted by the singular, terrifying thought of the emperor's impending death.
She reflects on the immense struggle she endured just to reach this pivotal moment in the palace.
Her mind races as she focuses entirely on finding a cure for the autoimmune disease. A whimsical system prompt suggests systemic steroids while warning of potential long-term side effects.
The girl collapses in despair, wondering how she could possibly find modern steroids in this world.
Another system notification materializes before her eyes as she searches for a desperate alternative.
The report reveals that the haniel plant can serve as a viable substitute for steroid treatment.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft myung sounding as the girl realizes a cure is within reach. The aide explains that the high priest's arrival is uncertain despite their urgent summons. Her attention is taken by a sudden, sharp kuliok sounding as the emperor begins a violent coughing fit. Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick hiok sounding as he gasps desperately for air.
Batilda urgently calls out to her companion as the emperor's condition becomes critical.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick byultuk sounding as the girl demands the haniel flower. She realizes with mounting horror that there are only 4 minutes left to save him. The healers whisper to one another in confusion regarding the maid's strange and urgent request. Her attention is taken by a sudden, sharp zirung sounding as a witness flinches at the sound of steel. The black-haired aide draws his sword and threatens the staff to comply or face immediate death. The terrified attendant reveals that the rare flower is currently being grown in the herb garden. Batilda points a finger and orders him to bring the flower to the room at once. The girl lists the exact drops of mus extract and redoxo solution needed for the remedy. Her attention is taken by a sudden, sharp Jake-cock sounding as the countdown drops to just over 3 minutes. Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick hootadock sounding as the staff scrambles to gather the ingredients.
Batilda stands with her aide and tells him that she will take full responsibility if anything goes wrong during the treatment.
The princess insists that he follow her orders for the time being.
The teal-haired aide tries to object, but a voice from below announces that the required ingredients have been delivered.
A blonde attendant breathlessly asks if he should simply mix everything together, but the girl tells him to hurry as time is running out.
A system notification confirms that the preparations for the remedy are now complete.
The maid notes that the situation has become a race against time as the system window tracks the production of the remedy to cure the imperial disaster, though she admits the process feels disgustingly bad.
The system window pulses with light as the girl successfully finishes the mixture. Enveloped in a determined aura, the girl thinks that a long, sickly life is far scarier than a short one and vows to ensure the Emperor endures a long and painful existence.
Her attention is taken by a sudden sharp tick sounding as the death timer for Emperor Anton Tarnak Schroeder drops to just 57 seconds.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick flash sounding as the dying Emperor's surroundings begin to blur into light.
The girl is relieved to see the lifespan window vanish, exclaiming that she has finally finished the task.
The aide presents a glowing vial as the system identifies it as an autoimmune disease remedy made by a beginner using the haniel flower, warning that the condition likely won't disappear entirely.
The girl in the maid uniform stares intensely at the medicine in her hands.
Her attention is taken by a sudden quick tap sounding as Batilda reaches out and demands the medicine, insisting on administering it herself.
Her attention is taken by a sudden soft step sounding as the princess moves toward her father's bedside.
Batilda cradles the Emperor's head, preparing to deliver the treatment.
The aide watches with a skeptical expression, wondering if she really intends for him to take that medicine, and questioning why she trusts the maid so much.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft smirk sounding as the aide decides this turn of events is actually favorable given the Emperor's precarious health.
He calculates that if the Emperor dies, he can shift all the blame and responsibility onto someone else.
The Emperor remains unconscious, his brow slick with sweat as the princess administers the cure. Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft sob sounding as the Emperor weakly calls out his daughter's name, and she cries out to him in return.
The medical staff and attendants look on in pure shock at the Emperor's sudden revival. The Emperor sits up in bed, gasping for air as he returns to the world of the living.
Batilda tells him she found a famous doctor hiding in the meteorite village and expresses her relief that they arrived in time.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick ding sounding as a system notification shows that Batilda's trust level in Minervina has risen to 52%.
Her attention is taken by a sudden soft laugh, sounding as the girl finds the princess's creative lie about the famous doctor quite amusing.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, sharp clap, sounding as the girl realizes she has a new task to attend to.
Her attention is taken by a sudden soft shuffling, sounding as the Emperor asks to see the doctor's face, and Batilda kneels to block his view.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft clutch sounding as the princess explains the doctor was pockmarked by smallpox in her youth and shouldn't be looked upon while he is so fragile.
The Emperor weakly declares that he will grant the girl a reward of 8,000 gold for saving his life.
The girl bows deeply and expresses her profound honor while noting that she has just earned a quest completion reward.
The maid looks up in confusion as another glowing system window appears before her eyes.
The scene shifts to a grand prayer room dominated by a large white statue.
The teal-haired aide tells the girl she should make herself comfortable in the chambers.
Minervina looks up at the monument, wondering if this is the goddess of the high places.
She notes that while everyone in this world believes in her, the names they use for the goddess vary by region.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick tap sounding as she touches the base of the statue and asks herself if her power puts her on the same level as a god.
The girl smiles and tells the statue she hopes such a thing never happens, assuming the deity wouldn't want it either.
A system quest appears, tasking her with damaging the statue to weaken its holiness for a reward of 999 gold.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick turn sounding as she decides to focus on gathering what she can for now.
Minervina beams with joy at the prospect of the treasures she might find.
Her attention is taken by a sudden quick tap sounding as she picks up a pink patterned cloth.
The girl looks at the item with wide-eyed surprise, intrigued by its strange appearance.
A system window identifies the item as Edelpyrus's soul, a powerful piece of gear made from dragon scales that protects against physical damage, magic, curses, and elemental effects.
She recalls from the game that dragon gear is considered top-tier equipment.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft chattering, sounding as the dancing stick figures on the fabric's pattern begin to bother her. Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft shuffling sounding as she adjusts her outfit and decides the gear is fine since she needed protection anyway.
The girl smiles confidently, feeling much better equipped for the dangers ahead.
Minervina peers out from a doorway, looking around the hallway. Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick startle sounding as the aide asks if she is ready to head back. Dominic looks at Minervina with a neutral and expectant expression.
Minervina notes his sudden shift to a more polite manner of speaking.
She questions if he has suddenly become some kind of sage.
The teal-haired aide informs her that he has one final request.
Dominic asks if she would be willing to support Princess Batilda.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick swish sounding as he bows deeply before her.
Minervina asks if the princess herself was the one who instructed him to ask.
Dominic shakes his head and clarifies that the princess did not order him to do so.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick swish sounding as she turns away, stating her answer remains the same regardless. Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick grab sounding as Dominic stops her, begging for a moment longer.
He asks her to explain the reason behind her firm refusal to cooperate.
Minervina looks up thoughtfully while repeating the word reason back to him.
She smiles with a hidden and knowing glint in her eyes.
Minervina notes that focusing on the events of today is quite enough for her.
She recalls the Emperor sitting in bed and worries about the consequences of her actions.
The girl realizes that unauthorized treatment could have led to her immediate execution.
She reflects on the excessive violence present in this world compared to her home.
Minervina decides it is safer to avoid being swept along by the current of events.
She resolves to use her intelligence to navigate any unavoidable misfortunes that arise.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick tap sounding as Minervina explains her desire to avoid dangerous situations, while Dominic questions her decision to save the Emperor.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick sounding as she momentarily freezes, acknowledging that he made a valid point.
She admits there is a specific reason for her actions that she is not yet ready to share.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick swish sounding as she turns away while Dominic suggests she hide in the princess's shadow.
A mental image of the confident, silver-haired Princess Batilda appears behind the girl.
Minervina remains silent, staring off into the distance as she processes the suggestion.
The scene shifts to the exterior of the Grand Palace buildings under a brilliant sky. Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick step sounding as Minervina walks alone through the courtyard. Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft voice sounding as she wonders if Dominic truly understood her intent.
She reflects that there are other options available if her goal is merely survival.
Minervina questions if Batilda is the only path and asks if he intends to work with the Duke instead. Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick shaking sounding as she rejects the idea of relying on another's power. She asks him to convey her farewell to the princess as they likely won't meet again. Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick step sounding as Minervina notes that Batilda's request reveals her true desire for the throne.
She observes that there is little else to be done given the current state of affairs.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft laugh sounding as she finds a moment of dark amusement in the situation.
She envisions Batilda leading troops into battle and notes that the princess's path leads to destruction.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick step sounding as Minervina admits the realization leaves a bitter taste in her mouth. Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick step sounding as she continues her journey through the palace halls.
She spots a luxurious carriage and wonders which nobleman is arriving late for the visit.
A pair of formal boots steps out onto the palace grounds. A silver-haired man wearing an elegant green coat emerges from the carriage.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick beam sounding as the nobleman smiles broadly and claims something for himself. Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick thump sounding as Minervina's heart races at the sight of him. Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick clatter sounding as a carriage begins to roll away from the palace grounds.
Inside the carriage, Minervina asks if their sudden departure is appropriate, but the man notes the Emperor is recovering well.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft laugh sounding as he jokes that his presence might hinder the Emperor's health.
Minervina feels a sense of pity, noting he seems used to being treated poorly despite his appearance.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft hum sounding as he thanks her for her assistance in spreading specific rumors.
The silver-haired man looks out the window, lost in deep and quiet contemplation. Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick smirk sounding as he wonders why he agreed to such a forced request. Minervina reflects on her own kindness, while Exa acknowledges her remarkable confidence and notes she is feeling emotional. Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick choke sounding as the girl senses his heavy and indirect sarcasm. Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft chuckling sounding as Exa finds her irritated reaction quite amusing. Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick sounding as the man stops and stares at her intensely.
Minervina offers a polite farewell, explaining that they likely won't cross paths again in the future.
Exa looks away with a troubled and pained expression, seemingly bothered by her dismissal. Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft gasp sounding as he asks if she really won't see him again. Minervina finds the silence awkward and wonders why he is suddenly spaced out without letting go of her hand. Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick snap sounding as their hands remain tightly clasped together. Exa leans in close with a blushing face, refusing to release her hands as he pleads for her continued attention.
The silver-haired man stares at her with a soft and vulnerable expression of deep, pleading longing.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick thump sounding as the girl compares his pathetic look to a lost puppy. Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick turn, sounding as Minervina claims his rank as a duke makes him overwhelming to be around. Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick clutch, sounding as Exa accuses her of lying about caring for his high title.
Minervina is startled and flustered by how easily and quickly he can read her true feelings.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft shuffling sounding as the duke insists she be honest about her feelings for him. Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft sigh, sounding as the girl admits she doesn't actually find his company overwhelming or dislike it. Exa remains silent, staring at her with wide eyes as he processes her unexpected and honest admission. Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft laugh, sounding as he breaks into a genuine and joyous laugh. Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick thump, sounding as Minervina's heart races from the impact of his charming smile. The sun sets slowly over the quiet and elegant buildings of the royal palace grounds. Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft sigh, sounding as the girl slides down her bedroom door in total exhaustion. Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick thump, sounding as she struggles to calm her racing heart after seeing his smile.
Minervina reflects on the power of her simple confession and how much it seemed to affect him. A lingering memory of Axa's radiant and blushing laughter fills her mind and refuses to leave.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft sigh, sounding as the girl analyzes his peculiar obsession with other people. Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick snap, sounding as the girl slaps her cheeks to regain her focus.
Minervina decides it is finally time to stop looking back and start paving her own unique path forward.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft thud, sounding as she sits down at her desk to organize her thoughts. Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft scratching sound as she begins to list the realizations from her recent quest. Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft scratching sound as she notes the system's power to compel her actions.
She acknowledges that the system can force her to participate in tasks she would otherwise avoid.
Minervina realizes that she cannot simply run away from the quests that the system imposes on her life. She reflects that mandatory quests are unavoidable, and she must find a way to succeed at them regardless.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft scribbling sounding as she notes the system is surprisingly flexible. A glowing system window highlights the specific lack of penalties for failing certain secondary objectives.
She wonders if the system is currently being favorable to her for reasons she doesn't yet understand.
Minervina focuses on the final and most important point she has deduced from today's strange events. Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft tap sounding as she pauses her writing to think deeper. Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft shuffling sounding as she leans back, looking determined and pensive.
The girl determines that the system and the world's god are two completely different entities.
Minervina's expression becomes sharp and determined as she solidifies her new understanding of her situation.
She contemplates the system's rewards and how they don't seem to align with a truly divine origin.
She recalls her earlier theory that the system might be a deity or a higher order being.
Minervina reasons that a true god would never order someone to damage their own holy statue.
A quest window appears, tasking her with weakening a goddess's sanctity for a reward of gold.
The girl feels a mix of relief and concern as she weighs the implications of this discovery. Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft shuffling sounding as she reviews the diagram of her theories.
She looks at her diagrams and decides that she cannot afford to put blind trust in the system.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft shuffling sounding as she vows to prepare for future penalties.
A few days pass by quietly.
Princess Hua arrives, announcing she is looking for someone.
The blonde girl recognizes the princess with great shock.
The girl offers a greeting, but the princess dismisses it.
Princess Hua offers a knowing smile. The blonde girl appears deeply unsettled.
Someone addresses Minervina while gems sparkle nearby.
The blue-haired girl asks if Minervina heard about the emperor.
Minervina is startled to learn a doctor cured the emperor.
Minervina feigns ignorance while her friend continues the tale. The girl recalls rumors blaming Batilda for the emperor's illness.
Minervina expresses relief as the rumors are proven false.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft laughing, sounding as Minervina avoids the girl's envious questions. The blue-haired girl ponders the strange events. Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft laughing sounding as she describes the man's sudden wealth.
She wonders if his fortune came from the palace.
Minervina cautiously agrees, noting the emperor's close call.
Minervina is surprised by the intense public attention.
She decides to hide at home to avoid suspicion.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, loud crash sounding as they look up in alarm.
Agnes bursts in and tells them to go downstairs. She warns that an extremely important guest is arriving.
Minervina is left feeling completely bewildered.
Her confusion grows as the situation shifts.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft laughing sounding as Princess Hua lounges on the sofa.
Minervina reluctantly confirms her presence to the princess.
She politely asks the reason for the royal visit.
The princess claims she visited because she felt upset.
She complains that Minervina left without greeting her properly.
The blue-haired girl wonders if Minervina is personally close to the princess.
The princess tells Minervina to stop with the humility.
Princess Hua reveals a massive gift of 10,000 gold.
Minervina stands frozen in absolute shock.
Her expression remains fixed in utter disbelief.
The blonde girl screams in shock at the amount.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft gasp sounding as she apologizes for her outburst.
Both girls are stunned by the princess's grand gesture.
Minervina reflects on the monthly expenses of a commoner.
She realizes the gold is a life-changing fortune. Minervina is annoyed that the reward is delivered so publicly.
Princess Hua whistles casually while ignoring the tension. She begins to explain her reason for the generous gift.
The girls are startled by the princess's sudden declaration.
The blonde girl wonders if Minervina found a legendary artifact for the princess.
The girl pouts about the reward while Minervina senses an impending headache.
The princess explains the reward is for the emperor's doctor.
Minervina is stunned by the weight of the royal attention. Her attention is taken by a sudden soft pew sounding as she feels somewhat relieved by the cover-up.
Princess Hua gives a confident thumbs up while smiling brightly.
The princess departs, leaving Minervina frustrated by the encounter.
Princess Hua informs Minervina that she will deposit the gold coins into an account under the girl's name while her attendant carries the heavy chests. The silver-haired princess looks deeply satisfied.
Minervina wishes the princess a safe journey while secretly hoping they never cross paths again in the future.
The gray-haired man with glasses recommends that she invest her wealth somewhere other than her current choice.
A firm rejection of his advice.
The purple-haired girl remains insistent, declaring her intention to purchase all the land in that specific area.
The man warns her that she will regret the decision but agrees to contact the landowners as Minervina offers her thanks.
Shimmering light bathes the garden foliage.
Sunset glows over the city buildings.
Minervina celebrates with pure joy, ecstatic that she has finally purchased the property at Yaka Street 77.
A palace official stands before several glowing system windows detailing proposals for a monument and a regional dam.
A budget proposal highlights that Yaha Street 77 is being considered as the location for a royal monument.
Minervina observes the bustling street, noting that a new monument will surely attract a wealth of shops and commerce.
The girl smiles to herself, thrilled to finally achieve her long-held dream of becoming a wealthy landowner.
Walking through a quiet alley, she reflects on how she is successfully utilizing her knowledge of Bathilda's past obsessions. Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick gasp sounding as she stops and looks behind her in alarm.
A group of menacing men wait in the shadows of the narrow street.
Minervina counts 6 men and immediately senses that she is in a very dangerous situation. She decides to move quickly and avoid drawing any unnecessary attention to herself. Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick clutch, sounding as a man roughly grabs her by the arm.
Minervina demands to know what the man is doing as she struggles against his grip.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick gasp, sounding as a hand is clamped firmly over her mouth.
One man tells her to stay still while the other asks for confirmation that she is the correct target.
The thug confirms her identity based on the cartload of gold the princess gave her, prompting Minervina to silently plead for the system's help.
System windows from Jason and Liner provide graphic details on how to cause arterial bleeding, leaving the girl panicking about her lack of a weapon.
The thugs mock her as they notice the expensive sword she carries while she continues to struggle.
One man suggests they strip her first to see what other valuables she might be hiding.
A sudden and blinding explosion of light erupts from her person. One of the attackers looks on in absolute bewilderment.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft sounding as the thugs are thrown back onto the ground.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick scream sounding as the lead man demands what she just did. Another radiant flash of golden light fills the alleyway.
The attackers are sent flying through the air by an unseen force.
The leader shouts at his men to pull themselves together while Minervina trembles in total terror.
The girl watches in shock as the men are repelled by the mysterious power.
The thugs decide that their best option is to flee the scene immediately.
Twilight settles over the quiet town buildings.
Minervina leans against a wall, panting heavily as she tries to recover from the frightening encounter.
She checks her clothing, confused by the strange way the situation just unfolded.
The girl wonders if the system intervened to protect her during the assault.
Looking at a crude drawing of people being saved, she offers her sincere thanks to the system for its help.
Minervina realizes she underestimated how much attention the princess's reward would attract from dangerous people.
She concludes that the local security is failing and decides it is best to lay low for the time being.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft sigh sounding as the girl slides down the wall in exhaustion.
She laments the complicated and messy state of her current circumstances.
At the royal palace, a voice asks if the emperor has finally recovered from his illness. A notification clarifies that the ruler has not yet achieved a full recovery. The brown-haired noble explains to the silver-haired woman that the princess is still managing the kingdom's state affairs.
He expresses relief but wonders if the cursed item used was defective since the emperor seems to be recovering so easily.
As a woman writes at a desk, the conversation notes that the doctor the princess brought in disappeared immediately after the treatment was finished.
Narrative bubbles suggest the princess likely hid the items as her attention is taken by a sudden, quick tap sounding.
The silver-haired woman smiles warmly and orders that the person be brought to her immediately.
Night falls over the quiet bedroom as the scene shifts.
Her eyes snap open as she realizes that she simply cannot sleep.
She reflects on how she hasn't been able to sleep deeply since the frightening event she experienced a few days ago.
The girl wishes she could move to a safer location, but laments being short on funds after her land purchase, as her attention is taken by a sudden, soft grinding sounding.
She finds a small measure of comfort knowing she has Saul to help her avoid any direct attacks.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft sigh sounding as she regrets saving the emperor and attracting so much unwanted attention. Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft rustle sounding as she wonders what caused the noise.
Shadows are visible through the window, leading her to wonder who could be outside at this hour.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft stop sounding as she suddenly realizes her room is located on the second floor. Her attention is taken by a sudden, loud crash sounding as the window shatters into dozens of pieces.
Masked intruders leap through the broken window as Minervina demands to know who they are.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick clatter sounding as the men land firmly on the floor. Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft groan sounding as the thugs roughly gag her and hold her down.
She wonders in terror if these are the same attackers from her previous encounter.
She realizes these men are different and far more professional as they give a firm nod to one another.
Minervina curses her situation, wishing that her protector was present to help her.
The girl's eyes go wide with fear as she stares at her captors.
A sudden realization strikes her as the light begins to fade.
A silver-haired man enters the room, apologizing for the intrusion and explaining that he noticed the broken window while on patrol.
He stands at the entrance with a deeply serious and focused expression.
One of the intruders panics as he recognizes the man as Exarch.
A heavy and tense atmosphere fills the room. Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft sliding sounding as the man's gloved hand grips the doorframe.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft tap sounding as Exarch promises to release her very soon.
Exarch tells the girl to close her eyes for a moment while his cape flutters with intensity.
The masked thugs tremble as they realize the danger they are in.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick slash sounding as the man strikes. Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick scream sounding as he moves decisively against the intruders. Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick slash sounding as he draws his ornate blade.
Blood sprays through the air following a series of lightning-fast and lethal strikes.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft flop sounding as a thug collapses. Her attention is taken by a sudden, loud thud sounding as the bodies of the attackers hit the floor.
Exarch leans in and gently asks the girl if she is all right.
The silver-haired man holds her close against a beautiful backdrop of blooming roses.
Faint petals drift through the soft pink light of the room.
She confirms she is fine while privately marveling at the incredible strength he just displayed.
He observes that while the killers were intent on their goal, he was thankfully able to stop them all with a single strike.
Minervina asks if he killed all of them, but he clarifies that he spared one for questioning.
The silver-haired man notes the bruising on her wrists as the girl looks down at her bound hands.
He looks at her with a somber and pained expression. Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft thump sounding as her heart races from the close contact.
Minervina offers her sincere thanks for saving her life, but he dismisses it as simply doing his duty.
He asks her to wait a moment, but she insists that there is no need to delay.
The girl looks determined as she declares that she has a very good idea of where the attackers came from.
She reflects on how seeing the bodies of the intruders is a far from pleasant experience. A system window identifies the survivor as Reigen from the Ulysses Information Guild, noting he was ordered to kidnap her, which makes her feel like a game character.
She deduces that the request likely passed through many hands since it originated from high-ranking individuals.
Minervina suggests the motive likely involves the same people who were responsible for cursing the emperor.
A thought reflects on past dislike. Exarch asks if similar events happened before.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick tap sounding as he asks how she avoided trouble last time. Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick grip sounding as Exarch warns of the danger. Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick grip sounding as he suggests finding a safe place. Minervina agrees and asks for a safe, affordable place to stay.
The silver-haired man ponders her request deeply.
He mentions a free and safe location in the capital. Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick grip sounding as Exarch invites her to his mansion.
The girl looks up at him with wide, stunned eyes.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, loud fanfare sounding as the mansion is revealed. The interior of the estate is incredibly opulent and grand. Her attention is taken by a sudden, loud fanfare sounding as her new room appears.
Exarch hopes she likes the room while she offers a shy thanks.
She feels completely overwhelmed by the luxury surrounding her.
Minervina notes the vast difference in their relative wealth.
Exarch looks back at her with a gentle expression.
The girl stammers through a nervous and awkward response.
Her attention is taken by a sudden soft rustle sounding as he wonders if his request is too much.
She privately admires his incredibly handsome and charming face. Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft slide sounding as she invites him inside.
Exarch reacts with visible shock and becomes deeply flustered.
He hesitates while she asks if he would like to join her. A soft and romantic atmosphere fills the quiet room. Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft thump sounding as he admits wanting to stay with her.
Minervina blushes deeply while gazing into his eyes.
She pivotally brings up the men who attacked her earlier. She notes the intruders were likely trying to kidnap her rather than kill her. Exarch closes his eyes and considers the implications of her words.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick tap sounding as he tenses up.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick tap sounding as he suggests they talk for a bit.
Exarch leads her into a massive and impressive library.
Minervina looks on with a very serious and focused expression.
She asks if any nobles have a bad relationship with the emperor. Exarch questions her about the relationship while she notes the emperor deserves to die. Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft shh sounding as Exarch hushes her while she claims to already know the situation. She explains that anyone resenting the emperor would be unhappy with his survival.
Minervina deduces the mastermind likely wants to interrogate her first since the goal was kidnapping.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft hum sounding as Exarch considers the rivals.
He suggests Marquise Keto but doubts his guilt, leading her to ask why. Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft shrug sounding as he promises she will see. Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft hum sounding as she wonders about their closeness. Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick rustle sounding as he searches for a specific book. Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick pull sounding as he retrieves a hidden scroll. A diagram lists the high-ranking noble families beneath the emperor. The visual breakdown details the power structure of the 6 powerful noble families. 3 specific noble families are identified as being loyal to the emperor. Other families are identified as either being part of the noble faction or neutral. Exarch suggests the noble faction likely cursed the emperor based on his knowledge.
Minervina interrupts to ask if his information is truly cracked.
Minervina senses that something feels off while examining a diagram of the high-ranking noble families.
She reflects on Exarch's explanation of the political landscape, including the factions loyal to the emperor and those remaining neutral.
A mental system description details the key figures of the noble houses, including Duke Cardinale and Marquis Giucarini.
Exarch recalls hearing rumors that the power balance within the capital has been shifting significantly in recent times.
He notes that while the reason remains unclear, a specific individual has begun moving toward the emperor's faction. Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft sliding sounding as she realizes who sent the uninvited guests to her room.
Minervina smiles knowingly, confident she has identified the mastermind behind the nighttime kidnapping attempt.
She tells the silver-haired man she has figured it out, prompting him to ask how she reached that conclusion.
The girl decides to postpone the explanation, focusing instead on determining if the opposition is willing to negotiate.
Minervina stands at the library table with a deeply serious and focused expression.
A peaceful atmosphere settles over the room as the scene shifts.
A narrative card announces that a few days have passed since the confrontation.
The girl looks incredibly elegant and refined as she sits in her opulent new quarters.
Minervina reflects on how luxurious her surroundings are, musing on the fickle nature of human desires.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft clink sounding as she puts down her teacup, admitting she would be sad to leave. Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft rustle sounding as she senses someone approaching through the garden. Shadows move stealthily outside the window, leading her to observe how professional the intruders seem.
A cloaked figure enters the room silently as the girl calmly continues to drink her tea.
Exarch suddenly appears and strikes the intruder down, apologizing for the mess while she remains unfazed.
The silver-haired man draws his ornate blade, declaring that this group of intruders is his personal guest.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft thud sounding as the bodies of the fallen attackers litter the floor.
Minervina asks if the emperor was the one who sent them, and he confirms that it is highly probable.
Exarch gives her a gentle smile and tells her to finish her tea while he handles the situation.
She questions how he will manage 3 professional killers alone, prompting him to suggest calling the butler for assistance. He hesitates, worrying that a certain individual named Ernst will make a fuss if he finds out what happened. Minervina looks at him with a cold and determined gaze, suggesting that they simply bury the intruders.
She explains that since there is no other option, they should bury them deep enough that the gardener never notices.
The silver-haired man stares back at her, momentarily stunned by her practical and ruthless suggestion.
A heavy, intense atmosphere fills the room as he considers her plan.
Exarch bursts into laughter and agrees to the idea of burying the intruders together.
The man looks incredibly joyful and lighthearted against a beautiful backdrop of blooming flowers.
Her attention is taken by a sudden loud thwack sounding as a shovel strikes the hard earth.
He whistles a cheerful tune while diligently digging a large hole in the estate garden.
Exarch laughs happily during his work while Minervina watches him with a weary and exasperated expression. She deduces that the person who sent the assassins must now realize she is under the protection of the Grand Duke. He asks for her next plan of action as she realizes they haven't made a formal enemy of the mastermind yet.
Minervina declares that they have no choice but to confront the situation directly through the front door.
She looks up at the man and asks if he is capable of putting on a convincing act.
Exarch reacts with visible confusion, questioning what she means by acting.
The scene shifts to the grand and impressive exterior of a noble estate.
A butler presents an invitation on a silver tray, announcing it came from Grand Duke Sahig's estate.
An older, silver-haired noblewoman watches the garden from her window with a serious expression.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, loud creak sounding as the woman arrives at the palace in a grand carriage.
Beautiful blue roses bloom along the path as she makes her entrance.
The noblewoman offers a formal welcome, her eyes sharp and calculating.
Exarch bows respectfully, thanking her for accepting his invitation after such a long time apart.
She privately reflects that he is the most competent candidate to become the emperor of the realm. The woman laments that his upright nature is a problem, as he refuses to bypass traditional inheritance rights. She acknowledges the passage of time as he takes her hand in a courtly gesture.
The noblewoman admits her surprise at receiving an invite, but Exarch assures her that the reason is not too serious.
Exarch informs the noblewoman that he felt it was necessary to notify her.
He reveals that he and his allies are currently protecting the doctor who treated the emperor. The silver-haired man suggests they move inside to discuss the finer details of the situation.
He promises to disclose every piece of information she wishes to hear.
The noblewoman questions the validity of his claim as they enter the estate.
She notes that official rumors suggested the individual in question had completely vanished.
Exarch explains he faked the disappearance to protect the doctor from political struggles.
Her attention is taken by a sudden soft clink sounding as he notes things proceeded according to his plan.
He wonders if he chose to protect her simply because he felt a sense of pity.
Her attention is taken by a sudden soft slide sounding.
Her attention is taken by a sudden soft clink sounding as she observes that he is willing to sacrifice for the greater good.
She privately questions the motive of offering protection based on mere pity alone.
The older woman asks if he considers the doctor to be someone special. Exarch flinches with visible shock at her blunt and direct inquiry. He weakly protests that the situation is not what she implies.
The silver-haired man blushes deeply while struggling to maintain his composure.
The noblewoman wonders if the Archduke truly harbors special romantic feelings for the doctor. She reflects on how he failed to notice that she identified the doctor as a woman.
Finding his lapse in caution disappointing, she tells him she understands his position. Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft rustle sounding as she prepares to leave.
She announces that she will be away for a short time but promises to return soon.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft thump sounding as he remains flustered in the quiet room.
The grand glass conservatory stands beautifully under a clear and bright sky.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, loud creak sounding as she arrives at the glass garden.
She notes that observers report the Archduke's guests visit this location with great frequency.
The noblewoman exhales a long and weary sigh as she surveys the greenery.
She considers the various reasons why the Archduke would offer protection to the doctor. A mental vision depicts the doctor kneeling before the emperor in a dark and swirling aura. She concludes the girl must be fundamentally good to have earned such significant favor. The woman wonders if she could bargain with the Archduke for information on the doctor's whereabouts. Her attention is taken by a sudden soft thud sounding as she contemplates using the doctor to assassinate the emperor.
She reflects on having carefully weighed every possible outcome of this complex situation.
The noblewoman ultimately dismisses the entire matter as nothing more than a childish love. Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft rustle sounding as she reaches into her dress.
She declares with cold determination that the doctor must die while clutching a hidden pouch.
A swirling and oppressive energy fills the air as the scene shifts.
A narrative description details how the Archduke's mere presence hinders the Emperor's political faction.
A visual depicts a woman clouding the Archduke's judgment and causing him to act foolishly.
The noblewoman laments that she did not want to resort to such extreme measures.
Her attention is taken by a sudden soft rustle sounding as she prepares to use a cursed object. Her attention is taken by a sudden soft gasp sounding as an unexpected voice interrupts her.
A purple-haired woman named Layla suddenly appears with a cheerful and mocking expression.
The silver-haired noblewoman looks back with an expression of pure and utter shock.
Layla playfully asks if she can see whatever the older woman is holding in her hand.
A system notification identifies the item as a cursed artifact known as the resentful wolf's nose.
Layla explains the Archduke's immunity to curses and asks if the item was intended for her.
Exarch suddenly appears behind her and demands that she surrender the dangerous object immediately.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick thump sounding as he forcefully snatches the pouch away. He confronts the noblewoman with a stern gaze, accusing her of plotting to kill the Emperor. Layla mocks her failed plan, noting that she can no longer claim the situation was a coincidence. The noblewoman finds the current revelation quite interesting. She smiles with a sharp and calculating gaze. Layla makes a sudden and surprising entrance.
The noblewoman questions the girl's deceptive act.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft snort sounding.
Layla challenges the noblewoman's claim of ignorance. Layla wonders if she has been recognized. The mystery surrounding her true identity deepens. Layla asks about her link to Minervina.
The noblewoman watches her with cold amusement.
She finds the doctor's masked identity unbelievable.
Layla explains she had to hide herself.
The cursed object lies between them now. Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft slide-sider.
The woman denies any accusations of treason.
Layla insists she is merely stating facts.
She claims she is not an enemy.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft thump sounding.
Layla declares she serves no master's whims.
She mentions preparing the test for her.
Layla speaks of the Duke's secret affection. She probes what truly angers the woman.
A heavy silence fills the opulent room.
Elegant white flowers bloom in the background. Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft slide sounding. Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft trickle sounding as Layla describes the murder plot.
The noblewoman decries the girl's unfounded slander. Layla remains entirely cheerful and unbothered. She asks for an opinion on politics. Visions show the public suffering under taxes. The woman questions the conversation's relevance.
Layla continues to calmly pour the tea.
She reflects on the woman's secret support.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick tap sounding. Layla exposes the woman's family financial honor.
The noblewoman is visibly stunned by this. Layla analyzes her political manipulation tactics. She mentions currying favor for personal gain.
Layla asks if this is Revekid.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, hollow bang sounding. Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft giggle sounding.
The noblewoman wonders who provided this information.
Layla refuses any lessons in noble etiquette.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft clink sounding. The woman probes the motive for rescue.
Layla explains clearing the princess's name.
A tense moment of shared reflection passes. Layla notes the status of the air.
She describes the prince's terrible reputation.
The noblewoman finally concedes with a sigh. Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick tap sounding as she reflects on the nature of gambling and control.
Layla offers a polite apology for interfering with the long-term plans that had been set in motion.
She bows respectfully while maintaining a calm demeanor and promising that such an occurrence will not happen again.
Layla clarifies that both she and the Archduke Zahig have no desire to be entangled in the ongoing imperial family conflicts.
She explains that her treatment of the emperor was not a political move, but a necessity born of limited options.
The older silver-haired noblewoman remains skeptical, finding Layla's explanation of her actions to be logically inconsistent.
A tense silence falls over the room as the noblewoman scrutinizes her guest with a calculating gaze. Layla takes a composed sip of her tea while privately deciding to steer the conversation away from dangerous territory.
She speaks with a calm confidence, offering to provide information that will soothe the noblewoman's doubts.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft clink sounding as she sets her cup down to begin her explanation.
Layla picks up a white rose and describes the delicate balance required when using Hanil flowers for the emperor's treatment.
She adopts a humble tone, suggesting that while she is powerless, a person of influence could easily manipulate the medical center's staff.
Layla casually shreds the flower while revealing her knowledge of secret urban development plans and potential land investment opportunities.
The silver-haired noblewoman is visibly shaken by the revelation, realizing it explains the mysterious shortages in her own construction projects.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft chuckle sounding as a small, knowing smile begins to form on her lips.
Admitting her surprise at being read so easily, the noblewoman prepares to depart from the estate.
Before she leaves, she extends an invitation for Layla to join her side in a future partnership.
She promises a very lucrative arrangement, her eyes sparkling with newfound interest in the purple-haired girl.
Archduke Zahig suddenly intervenes, instructing his staff to prepare the carriage and asking the noblewoman to take her leave immediately. As she departs, the noblewoman mockingly asks if Layla has more tricks planned for the princess and the Archduke.
She stops and utters a name that leaves Layla appearing momentarily confused and startled.
The older woman turns away, leaving a lingering sense of mystery as she exits the room.
Layla remains still, left with the parting label of being a little deceiver as the atmosphere shifts.
The scene transitions to the grand exterior of the palace under a warm, glowing sky.
A brown-haired aide informs Princess Bathilda of the secret meeting, leading her to conclude that Layla is the mastermind. Bathilda realizes Layla's connection to Minervina and decides she must secure the girl's loyalty before anyone else can.
Undeterred by her previous failure, the princess resolves to find a different method to achieve her goals. Her attention is taken by a sudden, firm knock sounding as an arrival is announced at the royal doors.
Archduke Zahig makes a formal entrance, his expression grave as he approaches the princess.
Bathilda notes the unusual nature of his unannounced visit while maintaining her regal composure.
She welcomes him with a bright, practiced smile and asks what has brought him to her quarters.
Zahig acknowledges the breach of etiquette but insists that the matter at hand cannot wait for a formal appointment.
The princess drops her pleasantries and tells him to skip the formalities and state his business directly.
The Archduke immediately questions her recent actions, catching the white-haired princess off guard.
He reveals his knowledge of her visit to the assessment headquarters and the gold coins she gave to Minervina Lidor.
Bathilda dismisses the act as a simple repayment of debt, but Zahig accuses her of orchestrating a trap to force the girl's hand.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft gasp sounding as she flinches under the weight of his direct accusation. Zahig warns her that regardless of her efforts to hide her tracks, such blatant manipulation will only invite suspicion.
A vision appears of the skilled physician who once saved the emperor's life with her miraculous healing powers.
He demands to know why she persists in disrupting the girl's desire for a peaceful and quiet life.
Bathilda finally confronts him, asking if his sudden outburst is fueled by his frustration over her involvement with Minervina.
The Archduke stands tall and gives a blunt, single-word confirmation of his displeasure.
The princess finds herself momentarily speechless, stunned by his unwavering confidence and lack of traditional noble hesitation.
She regains her footing and insists that all her maneuvers were made in service of a much larger and more important cause.
Bathilda looks out the window, claiming that the girl can never truly be at peace and belongs in the center of the political storm.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, sharp hiss sounding as the Archduke's eyes narrow with intense focus.
Zahig counters her argument, stating that her actions aren't for the country but are purely for her own selfish benefit.
Bathilda tries to claim the two motivations are identical, but the Archduke remains firm in his rejection of her logic. He declares that as a subject of the realm, the girl is under the princess's protection, not subject to her whims.
Zahig delivers a final, stern warning for her to stop cornering Minervina when she already knows the truth of the situation.
A heavy silence settles between them as the confrontation reaches its end.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft slide sounding.
Archduke Zahig politely bids the princess farewell, thanking her for her time despite her busy schedule. Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft thump sounding as the princess clenches her hand in frustration. Princess Bathilda leans over the desk, wondering why the Archduke looked at her with such judgmental eyes. Her attention is taken by a sudden, sharp pang sounding as she recalls his words regarding Minervina Lidor. The princess realizes with a shock that Zahig's unwavering stance reflects the true, commanding essence of the emperor.
The scene shifts to a sunny garden where Layla playfully asks Zahig if he has a secret talent for acting.
She teases him for how convincingly he pretended to be fond of her to trap the Marquishioness.
Zahig brushes his hair back and questions if his display of affection was truly just an act. Layla is momentarily perplexed by his ambiguous behavior and sudden change in mood.
Amidst the blooming flowers, she mentions her plan to secure new lodging once her business is settled.
Layla intends to sell her property to earn money, but Zahig softly addresses her by her name.
He insists there is no rush for her to leave, offering his home to her for as long as she wishes.
Her attention is taken by a sudden soft shift sounding as he declares protecting citizens is a noble's honor. Her attention is taken by a sudden quick tap sounding as Layla admires his unexpected righteousness. She reflects on how he treats her with kindness despite her having a suspicious past.
Layla explains her refusal to live a comfortable life as a sage because of the immense risks involved.
Zahig offers a warm smile, stating that if her caution makes her strange, then he is just as strange.
Thoughts surface of the common belief that the emperor is the enemy of her parents.
Visions show a moment of vulnerability, yet Layla firmly declares she has no desire for revenge against the ruler. Zahig gazes at a red rose with a gentle and affectionate expression.
Layla appears startled as she is presented with the flower.
He tells her the flower suits her perfectly while reflecting on the singular nature of life.
A vision appears of a woman overwhelmed by the pressures of work in a previous life.
Her attention is taken by a sudden soft whir sounding as the moment in the garden continues.
A monocled butler announces the arrival of a messenger from the imperial palace.
A massive pile of elegantly wrapped gift boxes stands before the mansion's doors.
Layla and Zahig stare at the overwhelming collection of gifts with confusion and disbelief.
A maid explains the gifts are addressed to Layla from the workers at Sophos. Layla wonders if this lavish gesture is a belated apology for the danger she was recently put through. She questions the timing of such an elaborate display. Zahig watches her with a knowing smile, seemingly amused by the situation.
The maid adds that the princess specifically requested Layla receive the main gift personally.
Layla's eyes widen as she prepares to see what is inside the large box. A magnificent, shimmering white gown adorned with gold patterns is revealed inside the package.
A narration describes the dress as a rare treasure, one of only 2 in existence across the continent.
Shocked by its value, Layla asks if the gift is far too expensive for her to accept.
Zahig gives a small, awkward cough while observing her reaction to the extravagant dress.
Layla decides to accept the gown since it was given as a formal gift.
She resolves to continue living life on her own terms despite the new attention.
Layla maintains a cheerful demeanor as the scene transitions.
Her attention is taken by a sudden quick clap sounding from a happy blonde woman.
The woman mentions hearing that Layla was preoccupied with an urgent family matter.
She greets Layla warmly, expressing her joy at their reunion. The blonde woman brings up the upcoming Gashu auction and her desire to contact Layla about it.
She closes her eyes with a satisfied and bright smile.
Layla expresses her interest, mentioning she was already considering a mission related to the event.
Her attention is taken by a sudden soft whir sounding as she reveals an escort has already been arranged.
She confirms her plan to attend the event alongside the Archduke.
Archduke Zahig stands in a grand floral-themed portrait, his refined noble attire and gentle expression highlighting his striking appearance.
The scene shifts to the vibrant and busy Hainshow Street, where colorful market stalls line the sunlit pathways.
Zahig and Minervina walk together through the market disguised in hooded cloaks, with the Archduke noting how rare it is to find items of true value.
He looks toward the girl and adds that he would search for such things if it were for her.
Passers-by begin to whisper about the tall and handsome stranger, causing Minervina to ask Zahig to lower his hood even further.
Even with his face partially obscured, the narration observes that the Archduke's undeniable beauty remains perfectly evident.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, firm tug, sounding as Minervina pulls on his cloak and tells him to come closer.
Zahig appears momentarily startled by her sudden proximity and direct approach.
Minervina insists on adjusting his hood herself, worried that they won't be able to walk through the crowd without drawing excessive attention.
She remarks that his good looks are becoming a practical problem for their secret outing while he looks on with a slight blush. She reaches up with both hands to carefully arrange the fabric around his face, focusing intently on the task.
Her attention is taken by a sudden soft gasp sounding as she notices something unexpected through her assessment ability.
A glowing system window appears, revealing that while the artist Gaishu is currently obscure, his masterpieces will one day be worth over 32 million gold coins.
Minervina spots the silver-haired artist sitting among his paintings and asks if they are his work. He dismissively offers to sell any piece for 30 gold coins.
A biography window identifies Gaishu as a street painter destined to take the art world by storm despite his current lack of recognition.
Minervina turns back to her companion and asks if he has any money on hand.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft chuckle sounding as Zahig blushes and laughs at her blunt request.
He asks how much she requires, and she brightly responds that she needs enough to buy every single painting in the collection.
Zahig is visibly stunned as he clutches a bag of gold, questioning if she truly intends to purchase the entire stock right here.
She playfully tells him to pick one for himself and explains that the rest will serve as a gift to repay him for his recent hospitality.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft whir sounding as she offers a radiant smile amidst a backdrop of blooming flowers.
A close-up reveals Zahig's eyes softening with warmth as he watches her joyful reaction.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick nod sounding as the Archduke agrees to her plan with a gentle expression.
As they continue their walk, Minervina reflects on how surprisingly pleasant it is to wander through the city's winding alleys.
She stops abruptly in front of a storefront, uttering a soft sound of recognition as she peers through the window.
System notifications label several items in the display as fakes, confirming that the shop specializes in selling counterfeit goods.
She recalls hearing that Elise Barrett was once humiliated by a fake painting sold by a man named Bobado.
Minervina smiles to herself, realizing this is the perfect opportunity to return a favor to her blonde friend.
Her attention is taken by a sudden quick clack sounding as she determinedly heads toward the entrance of the shady shop.
Zayak follows closely behind, appearing confused by her sudden change in direction and asking what has caught her interest. She claims she simply felt something strange, while the Archduke wonders if she is truly aware of the shop's dubious reputation. Her attention is taken by a sudden soft laugh sounding as Zahik notes the shop's dangerous appearance and questions if her entry is part of her wise guarantee.
He reaches out and gently adjusts her hood one more time, his movements filled with care. Zahik gazes at her with a blush, stating that he follows her because he trusts she would never do anything truly bad. Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft throb sounding as Minervina blushes and quietly thanks him for his unwavering trust.
The Archduke suggests they take a quick look inside since they are already at the door.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick thud sounding as her heart flutters, leaving her bewildered by his constant kindness. Minervina enters the dim interior of the shop and begins looking around with a curious expression.
Her attention is taken by a sudden soft hum sounding as she begins scanning the room's inventory with her specialized vision.
A gray-haired man with an eye patch turns around as he hears someone calling out to him.
Minervina points toward a specific item on a high shelf and asks the one-eyed clerk if it is available for purchase.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft scratch sounding as the man admits the vase is for sale, but warns her it is considered a failed piece.
Minervina smiles confidently, telling him it is fine and noting to herself that the item is far more valuable than it appears.
A large speech bubble confirms her definitive decision to make the purchase.
She looks toward the object with a knowing and satisfied grin, certain of the hidden value she has discovered.
The scene transitions with a title card announcing that the day of the grand auction has finally arrived. A magnificent estate serving as the auction house is shown under a clear, bright sky. Her attention is taken by a sudden, boisterous laugh sounding from a blonde-haired noble as the event begins.
The man asks Elise Barrett if she has reconsidered his offer, but she firmly and respectfully declines him.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, sharp scoff sounding as the noble mocks her loyalty to a guild leader he claims has abandoned her, but Elise insists her leader is merely busy with important affairs. Ulysses wonders what could be so important that the guild leader has not returned even though his naive deputy purchased a fake painting.
Elise Barrett points an accusing finger at Ulysses, shouting that the current situation is because he deceived everyone and sold forgeries.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft shush sounding as Ulysses tells her to lower her voice to avoid damaging the reputation of everyone at Sophos. Minervina watches as the narration explains that scoundrels intend for Sophos to suffer for failing to detect the forgeries, while Ulysses escapes the consequences.
Ulysses Francois offers a dark and satisfied smirk from behind the frame of a painting.
The narration observes that people often despise the helpless more than villains, ensuring that Sophos' reputation will be ruined by this oversight.
A shimmering golden emblem represents the high stakes of the auction and the fragility of a guild's professional standing.
Knowing the danger of rumors, Elise Barrett maintains a stoic expression and kept silent even after discovering she had bought a fake painting.
Minervina observes from her hood as Jack greets Ulysses as his master and asks if the auction setup is finally complete.
A glowing system window identifies Jack as a former appraisal expert at Sophos who joined Ulysses after losing faith in his previous guild.
Minervina realizes the true plan is to destabilize Sophos, while Ulysses decides it is time for him to take his leave. Ulysses bids Elise a mocking farewell, telling her they will speak again and expressing hope that she will accept his offer then. Her attention is taken by a sudden, firm squeeze sounding as Elise clenches her gloved hand in silent fury while the scoundrel walks away.
Elise looks toward Minervina with a desperate expression and asks if they can truly take revenge on that man.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick nod sounding as Minervina offers a bright and encouraging response to her friend. Minervina reflects on her personal code, stating that she believes in the justice of good triumphing over evil. She watches Ulysses walk away and thinks to herself that cowards will always fall victim to their own schemes in the end. Back at the auction, Ulysses notices that the seat next to Elise Barrett is vacant and prepares to approach her. He decides to sit there, prompting Jack to ask why he chose that specific spot when he clearly dislikes the woman. Ulysses laughs and calls his subordinate a fool, explaining that he simply wants to enjoy watching her reaction to the events. A jagged speech bubble announces the official beginning of the grand auction.
The brown-haired auctioneer greets the crowd and notes that many attendees have come specifically to see the first item.
A magnificent and ethereal painting titled The Angel by the artist Angela Moss is unveiled to the stunned audience.
The crowd begins to whisper in disbelief, as they were under the impression that the artist had only ever painted a single angel.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft chuckle sounding as Ulysses anticipates the painting selling for a fortune while wondering why Elise seems so calm. He assumes she must be planning to bid on the piece and watches her closely for any sign of weakness.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft cough sounding as Ulysses mocks Elise for her previous expensive purchase of a simple artistic draft.
The auctioneer interrupts the murmurs to announce that she will reveal a secret surrounding the painting's origin.
Ulysses looks on with a confused and startled expression.
She explains the astonishing fact that this masterpiece was actually hidden on the back of one of Angela Moss's drafts.
The auctioneer reveals the draft was sold at the Gashu auction last month, causing Ulysses to gape in shock while Elise smiles knowingly. Elise looks toward her rival and asks why he is staring with such a stunned expression.
She tells him he must buy the painting immediately and place a high bid so it can become an asset for their guild.
The bidding for the rare hidden masterpiece officially begins at 70 million gold coins.
Various bidders in the crowd immediately jump into action, quickly raising the price to 80 million gold coins.
Ulysses is visibly sweating as he realizes his higher-ups have ordered him to purchase the painting at any cost.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, firm grip sounding as Ulysses clutches his bidding paddle while the price hits 200 million.
Ulysses shouts a bid of 269 million, while Elise claps her hands and praises his incredible generosity.
Her attention is taken by a sudden loud thud sounding as the auctioneer brings down her gavel and declares the item sold.
Two attendants bring out the next item, which is described as a very rare ancient vase from the old era.
Jack asks if the vase is truly authentic, and Ulysses reassures him that they have personally examined it multiple times.
Ulysses vows to continue buying more valuable items from Sophos to ensure their ultimate defeat.
Minervina offers a radiant and satisfied smile from beneath her hood as she observes the success of her plan.
A transition of bright light and floral patterns marks a shift in the scene's atmosphere.
Jack thanks Ulysses for his hard work as they stand in a private room filled with their newly acquired treasures.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick nod sounding as Jack confirms how much he likes the items they have purchased.
Ulysses laughs with joy while holding the golden vase, declaring that although he paid 280 million, it is worth the price.
A close-up of Elise's mouth reveals her stating that an imitation could never hope to match the beauty of the original.
She turns her back on the men and observes that the superiority of the original is an unchanging rule of the world.
Elise turns toward her hooded companion and asks Minervina for her thoughts on their victory.
Elise looks toward Minervina and asks if she is referring to the vase that was sold at the recent auction.
A dark and weathered ancient vase is shown in its original, neglected state. The vase is shown cleaned and shimmering, radiating a brilliant and pristine light.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick nod sounding as Minervina recalls how the vase reflected a soft light even from across the room.
The one-eyed man from the shady shop explains that while the public saw the item as a failure, it appeared to be nothing more than a counterfeit.
Narration explains that true experts would have no trouble recognizing the item's hidden reality. Her attention is taken by a sudden, sharp gasp sounding, as Jack's wide-eyed expression accompanies the revelation that the piece was undeniably genuine. Minervina offers a knowing and satisfied smile as she points her finger.
Ulysses holds the golden vase with a look of absolute horror, realizing he is ruined if the item is indeed a fake.
Ulysses frantically calls out to a Gashu employee walking through Ta.
Ulysses demands to know if Sophos was the seller while accusing Elise of deception, but the employee maintains that seller identities are kept confidential.
Elise's feet are shown in mid-stride as she approaches the panicked man.
Elise shushes Ulysses and tells him to think of his own guild's reputation while Minervina giggles behind her.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, sharp turn sounding as Ulysses asks if she is truly suggesting that his expensive purchase is a counterfeit.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, firm gesture sounding as the employee informs him that any dispute regarding the results requires an official request.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, shaky slide sounding as the vase slips from Ulysses' trembling gloved hand.
Ulysses stands over the shattered remains of the vase, lamenting the loss of his massive fortune and his social standing. A jagged speech bubble carries his scream of absolute despair through the palace.
Elise and Minervina share a triumphant laugh as they celebrate the absolute success of their scheme.
The scene transitions to a grand palace under a sunset sky filled with swirling trails of magical energy.
The rooftops of the magnificent estate are shown as the day draws to a close. Her attention is taken by a sudden, light tap sounding as a gloved hand reaches for a jeweled box. Her attention is taken by a sudden, smooth slide sounding as the white-haired man asks if the merchant intends for the box to be a gift for him.
Her attention is taken by a sudden rhythmic clap sounding as the merchant praises the item and notes how perfectly it suits his highness. Her attention is taken by a sudden soft thud sounding as the white-haired man places his hand on the box and accepts the offering. He looks at the merchant with suspicion and asks where a simple trader could have obtained such a rare and beautiful object. The merchant explains that a relative found the box buried beneath the earth while they were searching for medicinal plants. She touches her chin thoughtfully and suggests that the box might contain a hidden magical mechanism. The white-haired man looks at the gift with a calm and regal expression. Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick wave sounding as he dismisses the merchant, who bows and thanks him. The merchant pauses before leaving to remind him of her previous request. He promises to soon handle the matter of marrying her daughter into a noble family. She expresses her deepest gratitude as she prepares to exit the lavish audience chamber. Her attention is taken by a sudden, sharp click sounding as the door closes and a blonde-haired subordinate addresses his master. The white-haired man turns back and asks what has caught his subordinate's attention.
He admits that although his knowledge of magic is limited, he can sense something strange about the new item.
The subordinate warns that the box is emitting an ominous and unsettling energy. Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft hum sounding as the white-haired man repeats the mention of ominous energy. He playfully teases his subordinate by asking if he is only making such claims because he wants the gift for himself. The white-haired man stares at the jeweled box with a pensive and suspicious gaze. A dark and swirling aura rises from the box as the white-haired man decides on his next course of action. He concludes that the box should be sent to the Sophos Guild for a thorough evaluation. The scene shifts to a bright morning where sunflowers frame a peaceful building under a clear sky. Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft rustle sounding as Minervina sleeps peacefully in her bed. The sunflowers sway gently in the breeze as the day begins. Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft sigh sounding as Minervina continues to rest in the quiet room. The sunlit interior of the bedroom is shown while Minervina's voice expresses her absolute love for holidays. Her attention is taken by a sudden, long stretch sounding as she considers taking a leisurely walk outside.
Minervina sits up in bed and stretches her arms, fully enjoying her slow start to the morning.
Two little birds sit on the windowsill, looking into the room as the sun shines brightly.
Minervina reflects on the established game scenario of Another Saga.
She reviews the status of various main quests, noting that some involving the Emperor remain incomplete. Shimmering patterns and floral designs frame her deep concentration. While sitting up in bed, Minervina ponders the sequence of calamities following the plague. She imagines a chaotic scene where people aggressively demand entrance, leaving her deep in thought.
Against a background of playful dog illustrations, she hopes for a favorable conclusion to her current situation.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft rustle sounding as a pink-haired maid delivers an urgent letter from the Sophos Guild.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, light slide sounding as Minervina accepts the correspondence. The letter is a formal message from Elise, who apologizes for disrupting her rare day off. Elise reports that a very ominous artifact has just arrived at the guild for inspection. She requests Minervina's immediate assistance with the evaluation if she is available to help. Minervina repeats the phrase ominous artifact to herself with concern. She looks at the letter with a troubled expression, her rest clearly cut short.
A cheerful voice asks if she is already heading out to start working.
The white-haired man, Exa, approaches her with a bright and friendly smile.
He notes that he had assumed Sophos was closed today. Minervina looks down from the staircase and silently complains that his constant dazzling presence is quite burdensome. She recalls that as the Exarch, he is a figure officially blessed by the goddess. She remembers a past instance where Exa used his holy sword to purify a dark orb belonging to the Wraith King. Her attention is taken by a sudden firm tap sounding as she calls out to Exa. She asks him if he has enough free time to accompany her for a while. Exa is visibly taken aback by her unexpected invitation. Vibrant flowers bloom around him as he processes her request. He points out that this is the very first time she has ever asked for his time. Her attention is taken by a sudden quick tilt sounding as Minervina questions if that is truly the case. Exa offers a gentle and slightly blushing smile while confirming the rarity of the moment. Her attention is taken by a sudden soft tisk sounding as Minervina looks away with a skeptical expression. Exa asks if she is intending to visit the guild with him. He mentions that he heard about the arrival of the suspicious item Elise mentioned.
Minervina agrees to go and admits that having his divine protection might be beneficial.
Exa happily agrees to go and suggests they depart immediately. They walk together through the manor, preparing for their task at the guild. A subordinate reminds Exa of his previous schedule, but Exa dismisses it to prioritize the current trip. Her attention is taken by a sudden rhythmic step sounding as they make their way out together. Exa acknowledges that his duties as a Grand Duke often keep him incredibly busy. Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft sigh sounding as Minervina pities whichever woman eventually ends up with him.
Exa stops walking and stares at her with a blank, unreadable expression.
Minervina calls his name, confused by his sudden silence.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, sharp turn sounding as he flatly states that there is no such person.
A swirl of blue and white colors marks the transition as they travel.
The statement that no such woman exists hangs in the air.
Exa looks back at her with a cold and piercing gaze.
Minervina blinks in surprise, clearly unsettled by his sudden change in temperament.
The scene shifts to the bustling streets outside the grand building of Sophos.
The driver announces their arrival in front of the guild headquarters.
Exa leads the way into the building while inviting Minervina to follow.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, heavy thud sounding as she notices Exa has been in a foul mood.
She wonders if her previous comment about his future partner was really that offensive.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, gentle reach sounding as she decides to offer him an apology.
She begins to address him, hoping to clear the tension between them.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, sharp gasp sounding as Minervina's eye widens in absolute shock.
A glowing gold system window appears before her, counting down the time until a mysterious release.
The countdown accelerates rapidly as Exa looks at her with growing concern and calls her name.
Her thoughts swirl in a confused haze as she struggles to comprehend the sudden danger.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, rapid dash sounding as Exa sweeps her into a bridal carry while she screams for him to run toward the building.
Exa acknowledges her command with a look of fierce determination and promises to reach safety.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, frantic clatter sounding as they rush toward the entrance.
The sound of a ticking clock echoes through the air as the time for the release grows closer.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, heavy crash sounding as they burst through the large wooden doors. Exa keeps her firmly in his arms and asks for their next destination, but she tells him to wait a moment.
A complex magical interface overlays the room, labeling every hallway, floor, and object with glowing text. Minervina winces as the massive influx of system information makes her head spin.
She bites her lip and forces herself to stay focused despite the overwhelming dizziness.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, bright flare sounding as her eye glows with a pinkish light, activating her special vision.
She points toward the corner of the first floor and tells Exa that is where they must go.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, rhythmic gallop sounding as Exa sprints toward the location she indicated. Her attention is taken by a sudden, sharp ring sounding as Exa draws his ornate holy sword.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, thunderous boom sounding as he drives the blade into the ground to strike the hidden object.
Exa stares at the result of his strike with a look of pure astonishment.
A system notification appears, identifying the first calamity as a plague carried by an herbalist from the Daltai Mountains.
Sinister vines erupt from the earth around the jeweled box as the two of them look on in horror.
Minervina stares at the scene while wondering what could possibly be happening. She feels a chill of realization as she wonders if the ominous disaster was specifically searching for her.
The gold window informs her that the first calamity caused vegetation to wither and die while seeking her out.
She is left stunned and asks the system what it could possibly mean by such a statement.
Her attention is taken by a sudden metallic chime sounding as a red warning window appears while the box begins to rattle.
The red window warns that the seal will break in 3 seconds, prompting her to scream for Exa to destroy the artifact immediately.
Exa lets out a battle cry and raises his holy sword for a final, powerful blow.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, shattering crack sounding as the blade connects with the jeweled box.
A blinding white light erupts from the impact, consuming the entire area.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, deep rumble sounding as the force of the destruction shakes the very foundations of the building.
The grand hallway is left in ruins as dust and debris settle after the massive explosion. Exa holds her close and asks if she is uninjured, to which she quietly confirms her safety.
Minervina gazes at the wreckage with a look of intense focus and lingering worry.
A new message appears stating that the first calamity was successfully destroyed by the one blessed by the goddess.
She looks at the screen with a skeptical expression and wonders why the phrasing seems so strangely sad. Exa checks her once more for any hidden wounds, but she reassures him that she is perfectly fine thanks to his help.
She offers him a cheerful thumbs up and praises his incredible speed and strength.
Exa touches his own cheek and asks with a faint blush if she is truly certain that he isn't hurt.
Soft floral patterns frame his sincere words as he tells her that her safety is of the utmost importance.
Minervina reaches up and gently places her hand on his face, looking him directly in the eyes. The air around them fills with the scent of blooming flowers as the tension between them shifts. Her attention is taken by a sudden, rapid thumping sounding as she realizes how close they are and feels her heart flutter.
She looks away awkwardly, thinking that the situation has become a bit too intense.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft rustle sounding as she pulls her hand back and Exa looks down shyly.
Exa coughs into his hand and repeats that her being unharmed is all that matters to him.
He regains his composure and asks what that strange object actually was, but she admits she is unsure.
Minervina reflects on the fact that they avoided a forced quest, though she knows the trouble is only beginning.
She stares at the broken pieces of the box and realizes with a heavy heart that the first calamity has officially started.
Minervina collapses to the floor in a comical, tearful heap, lamenting that she is just a low-level newbie facing such disasters.
Minervina struggles to recall the sequence of events, wondering what happened after the barrels and if monsters appeared as well. Her attention is taken by a sudden, light slide sounding as she searches for a hidden clue. Her attention is taken by a sudden, heavy stumble sounding as Exa catches her and calls out her name in concern.
Minervina apologizes for her sudden headache, noting that it feels far more intense than a normal one.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, sharp startle sounding as Exa asks if she has been pushing her limits too much.
She recalls a past event in Magdala where her specialized vision caused similar dizziness after investigating an illegal arena.
Her attention is taken by a sudden light tap sounding as Exa identifies her ability as the power of the Sage of Rhetor. Minervina feels a chill of unease, shocked that a game character possesses such deep insight into her secret abilities. Her attention is taken by a sudden rhythmic step sounding as she admits that overcoming this burden will not be easy. Her attention is taken by a sudden quick turn sounding as she realizes the tremors she felt were not an earthquake. Her attention is taken by a sudden frantic dash sounding as Elise rushes in, demanding to know what happened. Minervina offers a sheepish wave while greeting her friend with a nervous smile. Her attention is taken by a sudden, sharp snap sounding as Elise notes that all the furniture has been destroyed. Elise stares in despair at the remains of a broken teapot she is hulking. Her attention is taken by a sudden, light shrug, sounding as Exa dismisses the damage and prioritizes Elise's safety. Her attention is taken by a sudden, firm set, sounding as Elise asks for confirmation that the box caused the explosion. Minervina lets out a weary sigh while explaining that the artifact was a dangerous type of surprise box.
A terrifying Jack-in-the-Box clown appears as the narrative explains the explosive and unfortunate consequences of opening it.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick flinch sounding as Elise learns the item was capable of withering all nearby vegetation. Elise asks if the threat is resolved, but Minervina warns that about 5 more of these boxes likely remain. A dialogue bubble highlights the severity of the problem and suggests informing the royal family immediately. Elise looks on with a grave expression as she processes the magnitude of the looming disaster. Her attention is taken by a sudden, sharp turn sounding as Exa flatly rejects the idea of seeking royal aid. Exa argues that the royals won't believe them until a disaster actually strikes and summarizes their current situation. Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick turn sounding as Exa notes that Minervina is the only one who can identify these items. Minervina confirms that she has been trying to stop these calamities from the very beginning. Exa looks back at a past memory and asks if her previous actions were all part of this secret mission. Minervina laughs awkwardly while confirming that his intuition is correct. Her attention is taken by a sudden, energetic leap sounding as Elise grabs her hands, claiming she knew something was different. Elise gazes at her with shimmering eyes filled with newfound admiration for her friend's secret heroism. Minervina smiles nervously while modestly accepting the praise for her hidden efforts. Her attention is taken by a sudden, light swish sounding as Exa vows to remain by her side from now on. Minervina is confused by his sudden declaration, but Exa points out that he is the only one who can destroy the items she finds. Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft scratch sounding as Minervina admits his protection is a bit of a burden. A system bubble mentions the Exarch as the narrative continues to unfold. Exa looks incredibly pleased with himself, reaffirming his commitment to staying by her side. Minervina assumes he is simply happy to help save the world, but a sudden scream echoes from the distance.
Elise panics upon realizing a sentimental item was destroyed, while Minervina comically suggests explaining the loss to the client.
Elise holds her face in absolute terror as she prepares to reveal the identity of the powerful client. The scene shifts to a man with silver hair drinking intently in a room filled with an oppressive atmosphere. A bold notification identifies the man as the formidable Crown Prince Felix. Shards of red energy float through a dark and chaotic void. Shadows swirl together in a moment of quiet, foreboding tension. Her attention is taken by a sudden, steady pour sounding as a trembling maid serves more alcohol to the prince. Her attention is taken by a sudden, slick slip sounding as red liquid spills over the edge of a glass. Her attention is taken by a sudden, slow drip sounding as Felix stares coldly at the mess on his hand. Her attention is taken by a sudden, loud shudder sounding as Felix berates the maid and she drops the bottle in fear.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, sharp crunch sounding as Felix demands she stop looking at him with such pitying eyes.
An internal voice taunts Felix, calling him a pathetic fool despite his high status.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, heavy jolt sounding as a voice mocks his inferiority to the exarch, causing Felix to scream in agony. Her attention is taken by a sudden, heavy rattle sounding as the scene shifts to a dark, textured hallway.
Someone nervously announces their arrival at the prince's ornate chamber doors.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft slide sounding as a gloved hand reaches for a bottle. Felix smiles wickedly as he gives the order for his visitor to be led inside. A stylized title card marks the beginning of a new chapter. Felix relaxes with a drink while expressing surprise at his cousin's sudden visit and offering his assistance.
A moment of narrative silence acknowledges the busy nature of the prince's daily life. Exa stands before his cousin with a serious demeanor, stating that he has an urgent matter to report.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, light nod sounding as Felix encourages Exa to speak his mind freely. The atmosphere becomes heavy as the conversation between the two men shifts.
Exa questions whether Felix knew the true nature of the box he sent for appraisal.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, sharp startle sounding as Felix realizes Exa has dropped all formalities. Her attention is taken by a sudden, dull thud sounding as Felix sets his glass down and asks how Exa found out about the box. Exa leans forward intensely while explaining that the item was wicked and he was forced to destroy it. Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick flinch sounding as Felix processes the news while Exa confirms the box was a national threat. Exa looks down apologetically and offers to compensate Felix for the loss of his property. Her attention is taken by a sudden, sharp slam sounding as Felix demands to know where Exa originally got the artifact.
Felix gazes at Exa with a twisted smile while mocking his cousin's constant devotion to the country.
Felix notes how different they are, contrasting his own sinister actions with Exa's hardworking nature. Her attention is taken by a sudden, tight creak sounding as Felix clenches his glass in a fit of rising anger. Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick whish sounding as Felix hurls his glass while shouting for Exa to stop judging him. Her attention is taken by a sudden, heavy thud sounding as Exa demands to know why Felix is mistreating his maid. Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft tremble sounding as the maid cringes while Exa warns Felix against throwing things. Felix laughs hysterically and suggests that Exa's kindness is the very reason people follow him.
Felix laments that even their names are on different levels, comparing the blessing of a goddess to the moon.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick tap sounding as Felix mentions the oracle's name, prompting Exa to question the topic. Exa stares back with a cold gaze, while internal thoughts note that his cousin will never truly understand him.
Felix covers his face in a moment of despair, lamenting that Exa will never know why he became so broken.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft sob sounding as a young Felix cries alone beneath a large tree. Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick turn sounding as young Exa discovers the prince's hiding spot.
Young Exa gazes down with a gentle smile while noting that his cousin has been crying.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, muffled sob sounding as Felix asks if his father hates him despite his best efforts to study. Exa reassures the boy of their father's high hopes and invites him to take a walk to cheer up. Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft touch sounding as Exa takes the boy's hand while a narrative note reveals hidden truths. Felix recalls how his father scolded him daily, demanding that he surpass the greatness of the exarch. The pressure to be better than his cousin felt like an impossible burden for the young prince. Present-day Felix realizes that Exa likely knew about the pressure, but chose to treat him with kindness anyway. Her attention is taken by a sudden, sharp slap sounding, as Felix remembers Exa only became strict after he hit a maid in rage. Exa looks on with a grim expression, unable to bear the weight of his cousin's resentment.
Felix realizes that Exa's look confirmed he could never be the same kind of person as his cousin.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft slide sounding as Felix questions why Exa is bothering to apologize for the box.
Felix deflects the blame onto the appraisal office and scoffs at the idea of making someone as esteemed as Exa apologize.
Exa looks worried and tells Felix that he shouldn't be trying to defend the people at Sophis.
Felix points a finger with a dark smile, demanding that they come and kneel for forgiveness or face severe punishment.
Dark shadows swirl together as the tense conversation concludes.
The scene shifts to a grand hallway as a voice calls out to Minervina, telling her there is no need to do this. Elise promises to try and reason with Felix while advising her friend to stay back.
Minervina looks skeptical while wondering if Felix is the type of person who can actually be convinced.
Minervina admits that she wants to see the prince's face to check for clues in the system's status window.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, light rustle sounding as Exa asks why she wants to see Felix, questioning if it's due to his title. Exa gazes thoughtfully into the distance while considering that the Grand Duke might not be such a bad person after all. A quiet narrative moment mentions the troubling rumor circulating throughout the palace.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft sigh sounding as Elise explains the rumors regarding Prince Felix's preference for beautiful women.
Minervina rests her head on her hand with a bored and skeptical expression.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, firm grab sounding as Exa clenches her robe and warns that the rumors are even worse than she thinks. Exa worries that Felix might recognize her face from the sage verification conducted by the imperial family before her memory loss. A moment of narrative reflection notes that they don't know much about the event because they weren't invited. A dark and menacing silhouette of Felix looms as the narrative questions if he saw her face during that ceremony.
Minervina reveals that she consulted Princess Bathilda and discovered the Crown Prince missed the verification because he was drunk.
Exa looks on in shock and asks how she managed to get such sensitive information from the princess so easily. A chibi version of Minervina explains that the princess is simply repaying a massive debt she owes her. A maid stands before the ornate and imposing double doors leading into the crown prince's private quarters. Her attention is taken by a sudden, light nod sounding as Elise praises her friend's meticulous nature while the maid prepares to announce them.
The maid speaks through the doorway and announces that the appraiser from Sophis has arrived for an audience.
From within the room, Felix grants his permission for the visitors to enter.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, slow creak founding as Minervina nervously holds her hood while the doors begin to open. Her attention is taken by a sudden, heavy thud sounding as the grand entrance is fully revealed. The scene shifts to Felix's perspective as he looks back at the entrance with a cold and calculating gaze. Her attention is taken by a sudden, slick smirk sounding as Felix identifies the arrivals as the arrogant appraisers who destroyed his property. Her attention is taken by a sudden, bright shimmer sounding as a system window identifies the man as Felix Roderick Schroeder, the alcoholic prince of Orkenina. Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft hum sounding, as Minervina notes that his yellowed complexion is clearly a result of his poor health and alcoholism. Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick bow sounding as Elise steps forward to formally address the prince. Her attention is taken by a sudden, deep bow sounding as Elise introduces herself as the Vice Guildmaster and offers a sincere apology for the damaged item. Exa crosses his arms and firmly suggests that Felix should accept the apology and move on.
Felix stammers while trying to maintain his outrage, noting that he only agreed to forgive her if she apologized in person. Her attention is taken by a sudden, weary huff sounding as Minervina realizes Felix is acting like a petulant child just to annoy the Exarch.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, heavy step sounding as Felix approaches and reaches out to confront Minervina. Felix shouts in a fit of rage, demanding to know how she dares to keep her face hidden with a robe in a place of safety. A stylized title card marks the beginning of a new chapter. Her attention is taken by a sudden, sharp grab sounding as Exa catches Felix's hand mid-air to stop him from touching the hooded girl. Exa lectures Felix on treating others with respect, but the prince argues that it is the girl who should show proper etiquette. Her attention is taken by a sudden, loud shout sounding as Felix screams about the rudeness they are showing in the presence of royalty.
Felix demands that she take off her robe immediately or he will forcefully remove her clothes himself, prompting a dark glare from Exa. Minervina calmly agrees to remove her hood, noting that she can take off as much as he desires if it will satisfy him.
Surrounded by bright sunflowers, Minervina reveals her beautiful face and introduces herself as Mina, the appraiser of Sophis.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, light stagger sounding as the young prince is completely stunned and flustered by her appearance. Her attention is taken by a sudden, sharp huff sounding as Felix clears his throat and demands to know her family name, only for her to reveal she discarded it. A moment of quiet narrative transition captures the shifting mood of the room.
Felix looks on with a bewildered expression, unable to believe that someone would simply throw away their family name.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, cold whoosh sounding as Felix asks a disrespectful question about her being the Exarch's mistress. Her attention is taken by a sudden, sharp unsheath sounding as Exa's hand immediately goes to the hilt of his sword.
Exa calls out the prince's name with a terrifying calm, warning him that he should not say another word.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, loud clank sounding as Exa draws his blade and pins the prince against the window frame. Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick shiver sounding as Minervina and Elise watch the deadly confrontation in absolute shock. Felix screams in terror and indignation, questioning if his cousin has lost his mind by threatening the crown prince of the nation.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, smooth sheath sounding as Exa acknowledges his title with a cold and hollow gaze. Her attention is taken by a sudden, sharp clack sounding as Exa clicks his sword back into its scabbard. A bold narrative banner lists X's high-ranking titles as the Grand Duke of Jahig and the Duke of Jarodi. Exa stands with a powerful and majestic presence while identifying himself as the commander of the Northern Rajput Front. Exa stares down the prince with unwavering resolve, declaring that he will never flee or hesitate to protect what is important. Mina notices Felix is trembling and concludes he should know better. Her attention is taken by a sudden, loud ping sounding as a chibi version of the girl reacts in surprise. A glowing system quest instructs her to assist the prince in becoming a tyrant for gold and bonuses. Mina reflects on the quest, noting that the severe penalty for failure makes it practically mandatory. She resolves to exploit the situation and extract every possible benefit from it. Her attention is taken by a sudden light top sounding as someone formally addresses the crown prince. Her attention is taken by a sudden light click sounding as Mina introduces herself as just an ordinary appraiser.
Elise looks worried and asks her friend what she is planning to do.
Mina mentions that she has been thinking about a particular proposal.
Mina smiles graciously while reaching out her hand to the prince.
Mina poses a question, asking the prince how he feels about a new idea.
Mina offers to serve and assist the prince, leaving both Felix and Exa in a state of complete shock.
Exa calls out her name in alarm, but Mina continues by pledging to do anything the prince desires. Her attention is taken by a sudden, sharp peak sounding as Exa watches the girl with a skeptical side-eye. Exa stares in disbelief, clearly troubled by the girl's sudden change in behavior. Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft slide sounding as a dark smirk spreads across the prince's face.
Felix expresses his enthusiastic approval and agrees to proceed with her plan.
The scene shifts to the next day at the majestic imperial palace. Mina stands in a sunlit room, elegantly dressed in a yellow gown while adjusting her long purple hair. A close-up view highlights the intricate floral patterns and layers of her formal dress. A voice from off-screen asks the girl if she is planning on leaving. Exa stands at the top of the grand staircase, watching as Mina prepares to depart. Her attention is taken by a sudden quick turn sounding as Mina looks back and promises to return soon. Her attention is taken by a sudden firm clench sounding as Exa asks if her current actions are motivated by her status as a sage. Mina waves off the concern, admitting she wouldn't bother with someone like Felix if she weren't a sage. Her attention is taken by a sudden soft rustle sounding as a hand gently lifts a lock of her hair.
Exa holds the girl's hair while gazing at her with an intense and unreadable expression.
Mina looks up at the exarch with a startled and questioning look. A detailed close-up captures the piercing intensity in X's gaze as he focuses on her. The camera focuses on the ornate details of X's formal attire.
Exa looks down at her with a gentle, melancholic smile.
Mina remains still, looking back at him with an expectant expression. The scene transitions to the palace interior where playing cards are scattered across the floor.
Mina holds up a winning hand of cards and declares a royal straight flush.
Felix is outraged and accuses her of cheating, but Mina playfully denies it.
Felix encourages her to keep playing and stay as long as she must.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick turn sounding as a newcomer questions the nature of the scene before them.
A voice from off-screen describes the sight of the prince and the appraiser as pathetic. Princess Batilda appears in an elegant black gown, looking down at the crown prince with extreme disapproval.
Bathilda explains she came to see what was happening after hearing that Felix brought Mina to his quarters. Her attention is taken by a sudden, loud sound as Felix angrily orders his sister to leave at once. Her attention is taken by a sudden, graceful turn, sounding as Bathilda insults her brother's lazy lifestyle.
Bathilda demands that Felix release the girl, claiming Mina is too talented to be wasted on someone like him.
Felix screams in a fury while Mina privately notes that the royal family's relationship is complete garbage.
Mina's cold eyes reveal her inner thought that Felix would have become a tyrant even without her help. Her attention is taken by a sudden, sharp grab sounding as Felix notices the disdain in her eyes and reacts with hostility. Her attention is taken by a sudden loud crash sounding as Felix slams the table, asking if she also finds him pathetic. Mina remains seated and perfectly calm while cards continue to fall around her. Her attention is taken by a sudden soft laugh sounding as Mina laughs and dismisses the prince's paranoid accusations. A stylized title card concludes the chapter. Scattered cards litter the floor as Mina urges the prince to find his composure. Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft pat sounding as Mina comforts Felix and tells him to breathe.
Felix trembles while desperately stating his need for another drink.
Felix screams for immediate service as a terrified maid bows in response.
A system window identifies the maid as Amy, explaining she overserves Felix out of pure terror. Mina observes the situation with a cold realization of the staff's fear. Her attention is taken by a sudden light splash sounding as Felix pours a drink while questioning X's behavior.
Felix mocks the Grand Duke's status while drinking heavily.
Felix dismisses his cousin's noble personality as a complete fraud.
Felix rants about Princess Bathilda's arrogance while Mina watches.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, heavy swing sounding as the atmosphere shifts violently.
Felix screams about his royal status and his future as the Emperor.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick swish sounding as the scene transitions.
Mina watches the prince's outburst with a calm, analytical gaze.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, light slide sounding as Felix leans in and questions her loyalty.
Mina flatly denies his claims despite the prince mentioning X's past actions.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, heavy thud sounding as Felix pins her down to threaten his brother.
Mina remains unfazed and coldly tells the prince to stay focused on her.
Felix stares down at the girl with a mixture of confusion and hostility.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft meow sounding as a stray cat appears.
The orange cat sits calmly in the sunlight on the window ledge.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, light slide sounding as Felix looks up at the animal.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick step sounding as Felix rushes toward the stray cat.
Felix shows unexpected kindness while asking if the cat is hungry.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, low purr sounding as Mina notes his split personality. Her attention is taken by a sudden, rhythmic stomp sounding as Felix becomes flustered by Mina's presence.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, sharp turn sounding as Felix claims the cat is nameless.
Felix cruelly labels the cat a defective beast unworthy of a name. Mina observes him closely, realizing that Felix is merely projecting his own self-loathing. Her attention is taken by a sudden loud ping sounding as the system reveals Felix's alcohol-induced illnesses.
Her attention is taken by a sudden soft rustle sounding as Mina considers rehabilitating the prince.
Her attention is taken by a sudden light tap sounding as the cat meows under her cloak. Mina feigns agreement by stating that a defective animal is unsuitable for a royal.
Felix looks away with a troubled expression, acknowledging her harsh words.
Mina offers to find him a hybrid pet and elevate his public image.
Felix is intrigued by her proposal and asks about holding a grand festival.
A bright vision illustrates the prince's desire for dancers and a lavish feast. Narrative text describes the crushing burden of the prince's royal position.
Mina sheds fake tears while suggesting a feast to relieve him of his burdens.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, light scratch sounding as Felix considers the plan. Felix agrees to the idea and Mina thanks him enthusiastically. Mina gloats about her success while Felix mindlessly bellows for more wine.
Amy rushes forward while stammering a desperate apology to the prince.
Amy watches the interaction with a bewildered and uneasy expression. Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft giggle sounding as Mina hides her amusement.
Amy remains frozen in shock at the girl's manipulative behavior.
White flowers bloom under a clear sky, marking a transition in time.
A narrative banner confirms 5 days have passed as a garden feast begins.
Mina laughs while boasting about the effort she put into the event.
Mina gestures toward a lush garden while continuing to guide the prince's actions.
Mina smiles and pledges that everything she does is for the sake of His Highness.
Mina urges the prince to forget about reality and enjoy himself as much as he likes.
Felix hesitates at the idea of forgetting reality, wondering if such a thing is truly permitted for the crown prince. Her attention is taken by a sudden, firm clench, sounding as Felix clenches his fist, rationalizing that his royal status should allow him to indulge even more. Felix asks where they should begin their tour, but Mina stops him to show him a specific site first.
They look into a deep pit filled with sharp stakes as Felix realizes falling in would mean instant death.
Mina criticizes the prince's staff, claiming the maids serving His Highness are both clueless and completely incompetent. Mina gives a playful wink while radiating a cheerful and sparkly energy. Felix is left completely stunned and demands to know exactly what she just suggested.
A heavy atmosphere descends as the scene shifts through a series of sharp vertical lines.
Mina explains her plan to have the maids dragged to the pit she just showed the prince. Felix asks if they will die, and Mina coldly agrees it would be a good outcome for them. Mina argues it is far better to die by the prince's hand than to live a powerless life clinging to existence. Felix is horrified by her words, questioning her sanity and wondering why the exarch would keep such a woman close.
Felix experiences a sudden, jarring memory of himself shattering glass and shouting at fools.
In his vision, Felix rants that those as powerless as his servants might as well just die.
The prince's memory shows him threatening to kill the trembling maids with his own hands amidst broken glass.
Felix breaks out in a cold sweat, looking visibly shaken by the reflection of his own past behavior.
Felix watches his staff tremble and wonders if this terrifying image is truly how everyone has perceived him until now.
Mina notes that the prince's expression doesn't look very good as she observes his reaction.
Mina assumes he disliked the steak pit and expresses surprise that it didn't suit his particular royal tastes.
Mina smiles brightly and promises she has prepared other gifts for him to see.
Felix remains speechless and troubled, unable to find words for the situation unfolding around him. Two servants are shown bound with ropes, desperately crying out for His Highness to spare their lives.
Felix asks what is happening, and Mina explains these people are being punished for the crime of mocking him. Mina identifies them as the ones who fed the one-eyed cat before the prince decided to take it in.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, quick turn sounding as Mina claims the cat would have starved without their interference.
Mina argues that if the cat had died, the prince would never have been subjected to such a lowly sight.
Mina insists it was their fault a flawed creature roamed before him, as a royal should only ever see perfection.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, light slide, sounding as a hand reaches for a hidden object.
Mina hands a dagger to the prince and simply instructs him to use it.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, sharp swish sounding as Mina tells him to throw the knives at the scoundrels.
Mina explains that hitting the torso earns 5 points, while a headshot is worth 10 as the servants beg for mercy.
Mina gleefully odds that a strike to the neck is worth 20 points. She's really taking the gamification of her job a bit too literally.
A dark and heavy shadow looms over the scene as the tension reaches its breaking point.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, loud thud, sounding as Felix holds the blade with a trembling and sickened expression.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, wet gag sounding as Felix covers his mouth in a fit of nausea.
Felix collapses to the grass while dropping the knife, prompting a worried maid to call out to him.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, firm clench, sounding as Felix asks Mina why she is pushing things this far. Mina explains her goal is to elevate his status, claiming it is right for a royal to inspire fear in everyone.
Mina commands the prince to look up at the spectacle she has arranged.
Mina gestures toward the assembly, declaring that everyone present is looking up to His Highness.
Mina states the dancers and musicians will perform forever at his desire, regardless of how they actually feel.
Felix is overwhelmed by the horror of the scene and desperately screams for it to stop.
Felix pushes the girl away and commands her to disappear from his sight immediately. A system window announces the quest is completed, rewarding Mina for recreating the legendary myth of flesh and wine.
Mina looks on with a cold and indifferent gaze as the glowing quest notification floats beside her.
Mina asks if he feels empty, reminding him of when he once asked if she found him pathetic. Mina flatly tells the prince he was truly pathetic, while the staff whispers that she must be insane.
Mina concludes her thoughts by noting that using violence or avoiding responsibility is a completely different matter.
Felix cries out that no one understands his struggle under the shadows of Exa and Bathilda, while Mina acknowledges the pain of being constantly compared to them.
Mina reflects that everyone is judged by their background, appearance, and wealth in this society.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, soft rustle, sounding as a bright-eyed orange cat pokes its head through the bushes.
The stray cat lets out a happy meow and winks at the pair.
Mina watches the animal and asks the prince if he might be capable of finding such simple contentment as well.
Felix kneels on the grass to be closer to the cat, while Mina stands over him, encouraging his change of heart.
The prince looks up at the girl with a contemplative and vulnerable expression.
Her attention is taken by a sudden light slide, sounding as Felix shifts his gaze, looking slightly flustered.
The orange cat purrs happily as the prince wonders if he can truly change his ways.
Felix reaches out to gently pet the cat, momentarily finding peace in the quiet garden.
Mina offers a rare, genuine smile as she watches the prince interact kindly with the small creature.
The scene shifts to a carriage traveling through the city streets as Mina reflects on the exhausting struggles of the past week.
Mina smiles beneath her hood, relieved that the first major disaster has been managed and that she secured a reward.
A system window describes Saron's staff, an ancient divine relic capable of absorbing water, which Mina now holds.
A small, hooded Mina decides to keep the staff, sensing it will be necessary to prevent the next looming catastrophe.
Mina grows suspicious of the system, questioning why it would grant her helpful items if its ultimate goal is the world's end.
A chilling thought strikes Mina, causing her eyes to widen in sudden realization.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, loud ping sounding as Mina stares into a mirror and questions the system's true purpose.
A blue system window identifies her as Minervina Retor, an NPC vessel destined to bring about the world's downfall.
Mina is shaken as the notification explains her body is merely a possessed shell that has lost its original master.
Glitch-like notifications repeat her identity as an NPC, casting doubt on whether she is a person or just a game character.
Her attention is taken by a sudden, heavy snap sounding as Mina grips the carriage curtains, fearing she will be deleted if her free will is discovered.
Mina cowers in the carriage, haunted by the terrifying possibility of being erased for acting outside her programmed role.
The divine staff lies at her feet as the carriage continues its journey through the dark, uncertain path ahead.